OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Alright, a very good morning to you. Welcome along to OTB AM. We're with you every weekday morning from 7:30 all the way through until 10. It's the Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball. Johnny Ward is here. Johnny, good morning to you.
How are you, Ger? How are you getting on?
Shane Hannon is here. Shane, good morning to you.
Yeah, Johnny, good morning. How are things?
Whoa, coming in hot from the Crucible. How are you?
Keep it well. Flying, still flying. It's easy to get up early every morning when you have snooker to look forward to. I was going to give you a snooker background on the Skype here, and then I thought better of it. I can change it if you want.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
so I'll give you a couple. Yeah. So we've got the Crucible here behind me. I don't know if you can see that.
I like that.
Yeah.
We've got another Crucible version, a bit more distant, possibly.
Are these your
we've just got
your own photographs?
Yeah, well, I just took them off Google late last night. So we've got a snooker table generally. So I don't know if you have a favourite option or if you just want the blurred background, but we can stick with this if you like.
The nightlife in Sheffield, obviously not that good if you're able to get up for us and be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed at 7:30.
Yeah, funny. The people in the UK don't like to drink on weeknights, it turns out, or Sunday nights. Yeah, it's one of those weird ones where even on Sunday night we met up with a couple of Irish lads who had just happened to bump into over here and went for a couple of pints in a pub called the Grapes, which was a nice little Irish homely pub. But then, yeah, by 11:15, it's like, yeah, last orders. So quite easy to be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, as you say.
There you go. A great club in town, Sheffield, if you want to go out and dance all night, apparently.
Is it,
yeah?
Shane hasn't found it yet. What about the snooker itself?
Snooker's flying, Johnny. I mean, the draw's kind of opening up on one side for Ronnie O'Sullivan a little bit, with no disrespect, intended to the other players. He plays Luca Brissell at 10 a.m. this morning in the first quarterfinals, so it looks like it's kind of opening up, because if he wins that, and Luca Brissell has never been this far in the tournament. He plays either Anthony McGill or Si Jiawei, the young Chinese 20-year-old, in the semi-finals. And then the other side of the draw, you've got John Higgins, who's playing brilliantly against Mark Selby in a Titan quarter-final. Both players have won 4 world titles. So it's Ronnie O'Sullivan's to lose, that's what I'm going to say. But we could have a real exciting final this year, Ronnie against one of the big hitters.
What are tickets like, actually?
You're talking £50 for a session early on in the tournament. So around €60 to get, and that could be, I mean, you could get very, very unlucky. There was the other morning, because Ronnie had finished the session early and got the job done against Hossein Vafai 13-2, it meant people had bought tickets for a Ronnie O'Sullivan session over on table 1, but Ronnie had finished the match early. This is the risk you take with snooker. So those people probably came on Sunday thinking, oh, we're going to get to see Ronnie O'Sullivan for the first time ever, and yet he had finished the match early, so unfortunately, that was money not well spent. They obviously lift up the divider and you can see the other match, but it's just not the same.
Yeah, my mate sent a photo on the group. It's like, we've a really, really good view of the table, but like that was the table in front of them. That wasn't actually the table where the snooker was on. The table was like the other end of the room.
Yeah, it's funny the way it works out. It is a really, really good live event. Like someone yesterday was saying to me, I think they were watching Ali Carter in one of the first rounds. It was their first time over here, and they were like, Jesus, I was front row and I could smell Ali Carter's aftershave. And I was thinking, yeah, that's what snooker's all about. The sights and the smells, and you can almost feel the chalk coming off the cue and flying into your face. Not quite, but yeah, it's definitely one of those things where if you have a closer seat, all the better.
So you haven't seen Ronnie this year yet, have you?
No, I did. Sorry, I managed to see Ronnie on Saturday. So one session against Hossein Vafai, and he was brilliant. There were 7 frames. Ronnie wins all 7. Like, I couldn't believe that we got those tickets, because it was actually Stephen Healy, shout out to him, he's a Mayo or a Sligo man who managed to sort us out, and the Ronnie tickets, as you can imagine, are gold dust for every round. And even just Rob Walker introducing him to the crowd, there's just a different feeling. There's obviously four players being introduced for each session, and Ronnie was the last on that day, and I mean, like, to say the place was electric, and we were lucky to be on that side of the room as well, and he played brilliantly, which just added to the occasion. It's up there now with one of my favourite sporting moments live. Just to see, wow. I've seen Ronnie play live at exhibitions, and both in Drogheda and in Monaghan, but it's just not the same at the Crucible Theatre when there's something on the line. And in the year in which he's going for an 8th world title to beat Stephen Hendry, it was electric, lads.
Hussein,
I don't know what.
Hussein Vafai, am I doing that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hussein Vafai, yeah.
I mean, a bit Frank Lampard-esque going at Jurgen Klopp. Oh, there you are, giving it the big one with your 7 world titles. What the hell was he doing? Like it's one of the lamest stoke the bear, try and punch him in the nose efforts that we've ever seen ever in any sport ever.
It was ridiculous. Like even it kind of all started last year when Vafai said Ronnie should retire and leave it to the young players, and Ronnie always loves complaining and this and that, and people were like, who is this? Who's this Vafai lad? I mean, giving out at Ronnie O'Sullivan, the greatest player of all time. And then it just heated up after Vafai won his opening round match, and starts targeting Ronnie O'Sullivan as well, and saying he loves excuses. And Ronnie was sick in his opening round match. He beat a Chinese player called Pang Zhongzhu 10-7, and afterwards he was just like, you don't want to piss me off, essentially, and that's exactly what Vafai did. Even in the second frame of the match, he breaks. I don't know if you've seen this clip, lads, but Ronnie wins the first frame easily enough. It's 1-13. Second frame, Vafai has the break, and he just smashes the reds, a la pool table style in your local pub. And you don't do that against anyone. First of all, it's seen as disrespectful.
But Ronnie did it to him, is the thing.
He did. Yeah, he did it in the German Masters when Vafai was 4-0 up, and Ronnie was probably just thinking, right, get me out of here. But in the Crucible, against the greatest player of all time, you just don't do it. Ronnie, of course, cleared up. The reds were left everywhere, and Ronnie just had one easy red, potted the colour, and cleared up and won the frame. So it didn't bother him at all. Ronnie's steely-eyed focus has been something that I could not believe. People have this idea of Ronnie O'Sullivan as someone who loses the head a little bit, but not anymore. He's 47 years of age now, part of that class of 92 with Williams and Higgins, and to see him up close and how focused he was as a sports person was it was actually intimidating and scary, even in the crowd.
Yeah, because I remember the 147, that ridiculously quick 147. I was in national school, I might even not have been in sixth class at that time, and his longevity is incredible. Has he gotten to the stage now where, I know he's spoken a lot about this, but has he gotten to the stage where mentally he does appreciate where he's at, and he has to kind of embrace still being at that level and embrace still kind of being in love with the game as well?
Yeah, I think so. That would have been April 1997 when that maximum happened. That was the year actually Ken Doherty won the World Championships. But earlier in the tournament, as you say, 5-minute 20-second maximum break. But the mental side of it for him, I saw Steve Peters over here as well, who does be with him for the tournament. Clearly still working very heavily with him. But Ronnie, anytime you talk to him, and I've been lucky to interview him a couple of times, he's always referencing individual sports people. He's big into boxing. He was a Tyson Fury fan for some time. He follows different people. We were actually sitting very close to Paddy the Baddy the other day as well, who was down to watch Ronnie O'Sullivan. He's big into tennis. I think Federer is one of his all-time heroes. He talks about Tiger Woods all the time, Djokovic as well. So he's one of these people who just takes little bits and bobs from different sports people. Even the other day, it's the day of his match, I think, and he's tweeting about the London Marathon, and he's just sitting up watching the run, and that's what he does when he's over in Sheffield here. He goes for runs, maybe goes into the Peak District a little bit and relaxes. He's not on the drink or anything anymore. He's got a barge as well in Sheffield on the canal, which he sometimes sleeps on, uses for just sitting and drinking tea and relaxing, maybe reading a book. So it's not the image of Ronnie O'Sullivan you maybe had back in the 90s, but he's a different animal, and psychologically speaking, he seems to be in a really, really good place. All
right, Shane's staying with us. It's 7:38, just turning 7:39 this morning. Here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock for you. James Tracy's going to join us in studio to preview Leinster-Toulouse at 8 o'clock. Michael Verney's going to talk hurling at 8:25. Tommy is back with the power rankings. Meath outside the top 16, of course. No need for power rankings today from a Cavan fan, says Shane. Phil Egan's going to join us alongside Kathleen at 9:15 to talk Spurs and also Arsenal, and then we'll play out with Damien Delaney from last night's football show. Spurs have sacked their interim coach.
Indeed. Well, it wasn't a great weekend, was it? I don't know, are Spurs getting the battle for sort of fourth or fifth now is becoming quite interesting, because Man United are in such a good position if they don't wobble. But I didn't see the game Sunday with Spurs. I don't know, what more can you say at this stage?
Well, they need a new manager.
They do need a new manager.
Brian Mason is stepping in. Good opportunity for Brian Mason. Won 4 out of 6 games the last time he was the interim manager. So if he was to do that again, that would certainly put a cat amongst the pigeons in the race for the top 4.
Yeah, interesting debates about Harry Kane as well now, what they need to do with Harry Kane, even though he's an amazing player. Is he a bit of an upsetting influence?
I don't think he's an upsetting. Who's saying that?
Yeah.
Is anybody saying that, really? Anybody credible saying that?
It's kind of like, how much more can you say about Spurs at this stage? I did want to ask Shane about Mark Allen.
All right, we'll go back to the snooker, so yeah. We'd moved on from the snooker, but that's all right, yeah.
Just briefly, so I once was in a heads up in a poker tournament with Mark Allen where...
What's a heads up?
Heads up is like where you're down to the last two players, which was really misleading in terms of my performance, because essentially I got to the last three. It was on in Killarney, and my boss in the race post at the time, for some reason he couldn't go, and I don't know how we were invited, but like I got on this table with like Paul Carberry, Ruby Walsh, Mark Allen, a few rugby players as well. Anyway, it was a bit mad.
Was this back before you got into rugby?
I was probably more into rugby when I was like before that, but Shane Byrne went toe to toe on points with Shane Byrne. That was...
You're not going to win that, Johnny.
No, and I didn't. But it got down to the last three. But I had like I'd say about 3% of the chips left, if maybe 5. And it was, to all intents and purposes, a heads up between Paul Carberry and Mark Allen. And Mark Allen, like all he did the entire game was he literally bluffed. He was just kept going all in, and he won anyway. And I ended up heads up with him, even though I had no chance. But I spoke to him afterwards. It was like, you have an interesting style of playing poker, and he goes, I'm kind of the same in snooker. My attention span is terrible, and I just can't last out games. But apparently, he's finally reached his kind of potential, and this could be his year.
Well, Jesus, lads, we could have an Irish winner this year, and that story seems to be going under the radar. Like he's one of the best players to have not won a World Championship. I would say he's up there with the likes of Karen Wilson.
What a talent!
He's unbelievable, and this year, like he's got Jack Jones in the quarterfinal this morning, and Jack Jones, with all due respect to the Welshman, he's never been in this position before. Mark Allen's got to a semi-final before, albeit it was years ago, but it could well be it could be a Ronnie O'Sullivan Mark Allen final.
That'd be amazing.
The draws open up, which will be incredible. Like he's actually lost 6 stone, Mark Allen, in recent months. He's credited Ronnie O'Sullivan as someone who he's worked alongside to help him achieve that. Obviously, he's had personal trainers and stuff as well. In fact, one of the Irish lads I was with the other morning was like, went up to him the other day and said, "Mark, you're not half the man you used to be," which Mark took in good spirits. He's unbelievable. Like he's playing so well. He's thrashing people. He's not just beating people. All season it's been threatened. But the fact that he's doing it so, and he looks so healthy and happy. Like he was even on commentary for the BBC the other day. I was at one of the matches. And to be honest, I was distracted because Alan was in my ear on the earpiece alongside John Virgo on commentary. And lads, Mark Allen is an unbelievable co-commentator in snooker. Like he adds so much insight. He's so witty as well. But he knows when to be humorous. He knows when the players don't want the audience, for example, in the auditorium, giggling and putting off the players. So he holds the humour off to a moment where there's already been a shot taken, or where maybe he's on a century break and the frame is over for all intents and purposes. So he's an unbelievable commentator. He's clearly in a good place on the base as well. So look, if he could beat Jack Jones and get past this semi-final and maybe meet Ronnie O'Sullivan in the final, that would be incredible. He's a talent, and this year he's threatening to go all the way. So yeah, I'm not surprised to hear that he was a bit of a bluffer on the poker table as well.
He admitted it, but like you think Paul Carberry, like one of the most mercurial sort of geniuses in any. How do you call it though, Shane? So like, is it Rockets to lose more or less?
I'm going with Ronnie O'Sullivan. Like the way John Higgins has been playing, he's been incredible. Although Higgins hasn't won the World Championship since 2011, he's lost the last 3 finals. In fact, he lost 3 finals in a row in recent years. So he just needs to get over that line again. He's got Mark Selby in a quarterfinal. Like Anthony McGill is a player who's played really, really well and seems to just only up his game for the Crucible. A lot of people are fans of his, and he'll play Sijia Wei now in the next round. So I'm going Ronnie O'Sullivan, lads.
You really are in your happy place, though. That you're just happy there, really.
Yeah.
Look at the smile
just
on his
buzzing.
face.
There you go.
Just buzzing.
Fountainstown Foreland says, lads, the cricketers are doing great. 399 for 6 at lunch on day 2. Amazing turnaround from last week on the same pitch. The endurance to last 2 days in the heat is unreal. We could be on for a draw. Joseph Manny says, hope you mentioned the cricket lads. Ireland in a strong position at lunch on day 2. We'll talk about that.
Big moment for Sterling as well, I think, yeah.
Hit a century this morning. We'll talk with Phil a little bit later on. He's been watching it out there. Around about 9:15, we'll bring you up to date on how that is going as well. So, you both wanted to talk about Gaelic football this morning. You have a bee in your bonnet about James Horan's column.
Well, it's actually a really good column and
you're backpedaling furiously already.
Well, I'll backpedal to the first line. At half-time on Sunday, Galway had powered their way to outright favourites for this year's All-Ireland. Like, what? That's absolutely ridiculous. Like, Galway were hot favourites to beat Roscommon. I think the handicap was 2, but they were ahead of where they were expected to be at half-time. Roscommon were poor and their attacking limitations were exposed. Galway were leading against Roscommon. Galway are 4th favourites for the All-Ireland. They're nowhere near favourites. Kerry and Dublin are vying for favouritism. Kerry are favourites. So you can't say they were favourites. They were favourites in my opinion. Favourites are what the bookies say.
Hey like, man, that's just like my opinion.
Man, so they're not favourites. I'm with James Horan.
They were obviously James Horan favourites at half time.
But didn't say that.
He's literally writing a column. There's a picture beside him.
Galway haven't been favourites for the All-Ireland in a long time. He then goes on though to say that their kick-out strategy is a bit of a mess. Very interesting reading. I don't know, Shane. Galway for me, the fact that they got so close last year, will have some learnings from it. Coming through the Connacht Championship as well, so it's fairly easy for them to win one game sort of this year, and they're more or less in the top seeding. They're not favourites, but I do like their chance actually.
I hate all this stuff in GA where people from a certain county who are playing really well and doing really good stuff lean away from the favourite stuff. Like you had Shane Curran the other morning going, Roscommon, no chance against Galway. Essentially, you were on with me, Johnny. Like you're a Galway man. You're All-Ireland final last year. The team has probably developed from last year as well. You've got players like John Maher and Robert Finnerty looking brilliant. Once Shane Walsh gets back into it now and properly, you'll be even better. Damien Comer looks supreme. Might have found the solution to your goalkeeping problems as well. It's probably still a bit of an issue, but why not lean into it? Like if you got to an All-Ireland semi-final, All-Ireland final last year. You're into the Connacht final this year. Weren't far off Kerry, it has to be said, last season. Yeah, if Galway played the Dubs right now, I'm not sure who would come out on top of that. It's probably Dublin's to lose, but you got to lean into this, Johnny. Galway are one of the favourites, if not the favourites for some people, for the All-Ireland.
Well, they're 4th favourites, and like if you're talking about like the market is absolutely dominated.
But the market isn't always right.
It's not always.
That's the whole point. The whole point is try and find some value. And what James Horan is saying, in his opinion, they're the most likely winners. Obviously. But it's literally an opinion column. Of course, it's his opinion.
Why are Dublin so much shorter than Galway in the betting? That I don't get. If Galway play Dublin tomorrow, I'd fancy Galway.
Well, fair enough, but because Dublin are a far superior outfit to the team that played last year, that ran Kerry close in the second half.
Are they?
Yeah.
I know they've
Conor Callan's fit.
I know that. Like, did we see that in the league?
Paul Mannion.
Yeah.
And
McCaffrey's back.
There you go. So,
but who are you putting ahead of Galway, Johnny? Who are the 3 teams ahead of them?
Well, Kerry would be, yeah. Like Kerry still beat Galway with a degree of comfort last year, and there's no evidence they're any worse. But I don't know, the gap with Dublin I'd have shorter. I just don't know with Dublin. Like in the league, there was a lot of shadow boxing, and we haven't learned much yet. But in theory, if you look at the All-Ireland semi-final last year, Dublin should win the All-Ireland with the players they have back. But I don't know.
I think Kerry could improve on last year as well. That's the other thing. So Kerry are another year down the road of having Paddy Tally's defensive structure embedded. The young players are more mature. Like we're not going to see the full flare out of their forwards talent, I think, until we get to Croke Park on All-Ireland quarter-final weekend.
Ditto with Galway.
Yeah, maybe we'll see. Galway are being anointed by both Horan and McGuinness as like, whoa, this is it now. They played Roscommon in a game that both teams could afford to lose. Like, let's wait and see. Last year they beat Derry and they beat Armagh. And
and Mayo
in Croker.
Yeah,
they beat Mayo and Croker.
They beat Mayo and Castlebar.
Right.
Jerry's holding on to his 1998 Kildare bitterness. You see when he
I think that we're in danger sometimes of overrating stuff. Like there was an incredible performance from Shane Walsh in the All-Ireland final, but nobody really thought that Galway were going to win that game, did they? At any stage, did it really feel like Galway were going to win the game?
Half-time there was a point in it. I think there was a chance for Galway. I just feel like, this year it's tough to know which teams want to win their province. But Galway feel like the team, like Joyce kind of suggested as much, that the Connacht Championship still matters to Galway. I don't know how much it mattered to Mayo or Roscommon.
I was going to make this point about McGuinness's column today. He's talking about the basketball playoffs and how he went to a game one time in Charlotte with the kids, and the guy in the queue behind him says, "Don't worry, you're not going to miss anything until the last 10 minutes because it doesn't matter. It's a regular season game, but the playoffs are on at the moment, and every single play matters." And he was like, "Oh, the Connacht, that game between Roscommon and Mayo at the weekend, everything mattered." I'm like, it did not. It did not matter. You can continue to fight the ingovernable sea, but provincial championships are dead. I see Peter Canavan out going, "Oh, my medals are really important to me." Fair enough. That was a time when it really mattered. It doesn't matter anymore, especially now we have a proper round robin. The provincials are.
How long do they have, Ger?
I don't. They could have another century. This is the GAA. We could be stuck with them forever.
Climate change will take care of that.
Is the Hoover back with you, Shane? There's a little bit of.
There's no Hoover. There's no Hoover with me. No, there's no Hoover here unless it's coming from you lads. But
I guess the weekend means a lot to the likes of Offaly, for example, who are sort of thrown against me. Then you're like, well, and then you look at Louth. So like, it's not like the provincial championships. Like, there were always mismatches as well. So there are some kind of pockets of like games. Resistance. Like I know it's a bit of a joke, and you need teams matched up against teams of a similar ilk. But Sligo are in a Connacht final, Clare are in a Munster final. Offaly and Louth are quite happy with their lot at the moment, as are obviously our man Monaghan.
Clare are currently the second best team in Munster, and so they're there on merit.
Yeah,
I think you could say.
Even though their manager thinks the provincial thing is a joke at this point.
Yeah, but I think for Offaly, for example, like they played Meath in a game where they had targeted that for ages, and that suggests that they're going to be realistic contenders when it gets to the Tailteann Cup, and that's a really important, developmental stage for Offaly, who hopefully at some point become an established Division 2 team and then become like Monaghan are the model. Everybody should be aspiring to be Monaghan, and if the organisation and the backroom team is good and the structures are good, then there's no reason why you can't be competitive. At that point, then you go deep in either the Tailteann Cup or you cause upsets in the All-Ireland series in Sam Maguire.
Well, how do Meath approach the Tailteann Cup actually this year?
Well, they obviously have to go. They absolutely have to go all out to win it.
They'll probably consider themselves a little bit historically above this, but they're not.
Yeah, I think that's the point. I don't think anybody. You are where you are, and if Kildare are in the Tailteann Cup, that's because they've fallen into it as a result of not managing the league properly. And so, if Kildare are in the Tailteann Cup and don't win it, it's a disaster.
How do you avoid lads going abroad though? How do you avoid lads deciding at this stage, this week, if you're a Meath footballer and you're like, do I really want to win the Tailteann Cup? Well,
look, if lads go abroad, then they weren't that committed to the season in the first place, and you've got to question that, I don't think the club championship I don't think the money in America starts until later on anyway, right?
Yeah, it's true. I know that Ben McDonald was speaking last week, the Tyrone footballer, and he's going to Boston, I think in June. He's been over in Australia, so I think it's June maybe when the championship over there really heats up. But like you're seeing players, like there was news coming out of Monaghan in the last few days. I don't know if you heard it, lads, as well. But Ryan McNamee is back, which is to people outside Monaghan, you mightn't appreciate how big of news this is, but it's like Monaghan getting one of the key cogs, one of the first names into their starting 15 back into their squad. There's talk that he's even in contention to play against Derry. I don't know how true those are, but he's been in Australia. He's been living with Ben McDonald, actually, the Tyrone player I mentioned. Ben is going out with Ryan's sister Emer, and they've been living in Sydney. Ryan, of course, is a nephew of the late Aidan McAnespie, who was shot in Knocknacloy, and I think the plan is to go over and play for the Aidan McAnespie club in Boston from June onwards. But Ryan is clearly coming back into the Monaghan setup, and that was reported this week by Gaelic Life. So exciting times for Monaghan, lads.
If the league is being presented as a competition to rival the championship that offers more games, etc., maybe the championship should return to knockout and remove the Super 8 and develop the Tailteann Cup further, says Michael. I mean, just go whole hog and have the provincial championships at the start of the year, start on the new bank holiday at the start of February and finish it on Paddy's Day, and that's your provincial championships done, and then take a month off for everybody to go back to the clubs and then just play a league-based championship with 4 divisions. It's really easy. That's your solution. It's really easy. It's like it's staring us right in the face, and we're like, no, we can't do this obvious thing. It's too obvious.
But yeah, does that not turn the provincial championships into the McKenna Cup and the pre-season competitions?
But there would be no pre-season competitions. or keep your pre-season competitions if you want, and then they're definitely not the pre-season competitions. But it's a competition where everybody fights locally, and there's massive pent-up demand for inter-county football, and it's played over 6 weeks, and it's a festival of football, and everybody goes and they have competitions, and at the end of it there's a trophy. Like, if everybody's like, oh, you got to keep these trophies, keep the trophies. And if the trophy means that much to you, fight for it. It doesn't matter what time of the year you win it. Like, tradition, it has to be linked, otherwise people won't take it. They'll take it as seriously as they want.
No, but this idea of it has to be linked, that solution that you suggest would still get rid of the fact that years ago people enjoyed the provincial championships. We're talking back in the 70s and 80s and 90s, because if you won your province, you were straight into an All-Ireland semi-final, and that was part of the luster.
But you're not anymore, you know.
I know, but was it like,
so that
no
changed? They changed that like 20 years ago.
I know.
Anyway, Joy said in his interview that the only people saying they don't care about the provinces are making excuses after losing. It's loser talk, Johnny. Loser talk.
Yeah, well, like in fairness in Connacht, like were Roscommon overly bothered? Like, if you go back to Leitrim in, what was it, 94, like they had to be Galway, Mayo and Roscommon that year, as far as I recall, and that was unbelievable. And like, for Leitrim people, that will still bring a tear to their eye thinking of it, but it's just not really possible anymore for teams to compete. So I think just from this weekend, it does feel like an absolute nadir though for the provincial system, because everyone knows the game is up, like, at this stage. And once they went down the route of the back door, they started tinkering with the knockout format anyway, and now we've gotten to a stage where it's just too professional at the top level, and the crowds at league games and the intensity at league games in winter, really good crowds at league games, like, is testament to the fact that, you know, it's up, the game is up, like, and it's a question of when.
I don't know. It like, I still really enjoy the league and the current league format. Maybe that's because I'm a Monaghan man, but I do think that there is something in keeping the league the way it is, keeping it where it is as well. I don't like the current system, so I'm not saying I'm coming here this morning with all the answers, but I wouldn't like to see the league changed whatsoever. Like,
well, it needs to be more incorporated into a championship kind of.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Could it not be played in slightly better weather? Would that not be a good thing to watch the best teams play each other in good weather? Imagine that. Imagine how radical an idea that is, instead of watching teams get pasted. Like, there's a good chance with all the best will in the world that Sligo could put in their best performance ever, and they would still lose the Connacht final by 8, 9, 10 points. And like, that's not actually beneficial to them that much. Now, let's wait and see how they get on in the round robin. And I wish them all the best, but it's going to be very difficult for them to step up in class if the draw is unkind to them. And it may well be. They may well end up getting Westmeath at home, and they may well have a victory against Westmeath in the opening round, and they could feel good about themselves, and everyone will go, oh, their provincials are great because look what they've done. But Sligo could have won the Tailteann Cup this year. Sligo could have been the ones having a mad homecoming and celebration and a team holiday, but I'm not sure that they're going to get that for winning one game and then being beaten out the gap in 2 other matches, and it just doesn't make any sense. Anyway,
Sligo's route to getting into the groups was basically, you know, to beat London and New York.
Why can't the league be run in conjunction with the championship like basically any other sport? Asks Shifty Lad. Nail on the head there. Derek Flagbanner says, classic Johnny this morning. Who writes this stuff? Cry laughing emoji. Not sure which bit it was. Probably
the one thing was you got to remember, like,
Bluffing with Mark Allen.
Sport for most of its history was like a part-time thing. Gaelic games is a part-time thing. You played for your club. You played for the county in the championship in the summer. For most counties, they were knocked out. Half of them were knocked out in the first game. That's what it was. It was magic. But now it's borderline professional, so it just does not exist in this format anymore. It's completely anachronistic.
Yeah,
and we have to
tension. Yeah, they all have to go to work. Right.
Look at Sligo's route to a Connacht final this year. That's the anomaly of it. Like,
who are you seeing today, Shane?
We've got a bit of Rooney. We've got a bit of Rooney and Luca Brissell this morning, and Mark Allen, Jack Jones. So all the players you want to see, lads. So I've been very thankful to have seen them over the last couple of days, but it's really heating up now. So Sunday and Monday is the usual final. So it's all coming to a head.
You're playing in, are you? You don't seem to have a media pass.
No, he was there.
I have media pass as well.
Yeah.
Oh, you have media pass.
Yeah.
And you're back tomorrow, just as it gets good.
Listen, back in the studio. I know it's unfortunate. You're going to have to listen to me talking about snooker in studio, but listen, worse things have happened.
All right. Good man, Shane. Thanks a million. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Cheers, lads.
Coming up, we have a live UEFA Champions League roadshow in partnership with Just Eat on the 3rd of May in the Mansion House in Dublin. We have UEFA Champions League winners John O'Shea and Wes Brown. along with Arsenal and Aston Villa legend Paul Merson. It's sure to be a brilliant night's entertainment. It's an exclusive off-air event. Tickets are limited, so don't delay. Go to offthewall.com/events. We will see you on the night. Just Eat, the official food delivery partner of the UEFA Champions League. After the break, James Tracy in studio.
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball. The Football Pod.
Jack O'Connor said, don't ever read a paper, it softens your head. It turns your mind to mush. You're kind of thinking, why did he say that? Or what did he mean by that? Or does he rate him higher than me? It opens up something that you do not want opened.
The only thing inter-county players should be looking at or listening to is the Football Pod.
Subscribe to the Football Pod wherever you get your podcasts. Off the Ball will be hosting a live UEFA Champions League roadshow in partnership with Just Eat. And it's coming your way on May 3rd, live from the Mansion House in Dublin.
We'll be joined by some great guests, including UEFA Champions League winner John O'Shea. Our guests will share memorable stories and reminisce about their careers.
We'll also look ahead to the latter stages of the competition.
This is an exclusive off-air event and tickets are limited, so don't delay. Go to offtheball.com/events and we'll see you on the night.
Just Eat, the official food delivery partner of the UEFA Champions League. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Right, it's 8:01. The newspaper has confirmed this morning James Lowe is out, and it looks like Jordan Larmour is going to come straight back in. That's what Leo Cullen has been talking about. James Tracy is with us. We could talk about last weekend, but really this weekend is all that matters from Leinster's perspective. That's going to be a footnote in history no matter what happens. So unless you have anything you really want to talk about last weekend?
Not a lot to talk about in terms of that. I don't know what, it's a very good lesson for a lot of the younger guys. I think the step up from kind of, whether it be the club and A-level rugby to playing against like proper seasoned men, you learn quite a lot. And I think a big lesson for a lot of the young guys is when you're playing at the lower level, you can kind of stay within your own head and you can just play what's in front of you, but you kind of have to be a step ahead at the next level. I think that showed time after time when, your job isn't always done. So I'll give you a small example. There was a line out kind of in and around the turning point of the game, in and around, I think it was about 29 minutes, and, Leinster take the ball at the front, but the second row, long hair guy, can't think of his name.
For Leinster?
Norday, is it?
No.
Anyway, flies through the back of the line and attacks Nick McCarthy. And there's an example of not understanding that, you win the ball at the front. If you're at the back of the line out, your job then transfers from, okay, you're not lifting anymore. You now have to block the guys coming through just so your 9 can pass the ball and you exit in your terms, while lack of experience, you switch off for a second. An experienced second row flies through on the scrum half, they deal with it okay and they exit, but it's not on their terms. And that was kind of the story of the day. It was like
kind of a relief that my tiny part of the job is done. You're breathing out, you're relaxing.
You're taking that mental breather and that's it. But
And to go over there to play like in that kind of, I guess, probably heat as well against, it's a new experience for them. It probably, there is a learning there for them. It's like, maybe it's not as easy as I thought kind of at this stage, like, and you get a hammer and you rethink.
Yeah. Like the South Africans are just very, very big, abrasive men, and they're very clever in how they play as well. I watched that game back and they were very tactical in how they attacked and took advantage of the lack of street smarts. And you only learn those street smarts by unfortunately going through painful days like that, and you learn more from those days than you do from the wins, unfortunately, for a lot of those guys.
The press conference, Leo Cullen's press conference, is interesting because it's like, I imagine they're generally fairly low-key events, and he's bristling, he's taking umbrage at the suggestion that they're buying success. What did you make of it?
That narrative is mad, the buying success. All of the guys who are now well paid have earned that through coming up through the ranks, and yes, there is a lot of central contracts in Leinster, but there wasn't at one point. They've earned those contracts, and that whole "we bought the success" is it's a cop-out narrative, you know, for the team that Leo's built over a long time, and like everyone like is quick to forget like the state we were in back then, you know, and we were nowhere near winning anything, and we couldn't keep up. The narrative was that the French teams were buying success. And you had that like amazing Toulon team that
Johnny Wilkinson.
Yeah, exactly. It was like a dream team, and you know there was nothing in sight for any other team that you could possibly compete with these guys. So I think it's a bit of a cop out in my opinion, to kind of come at the success, you know. And I say success, you know, we still haven't won enough European Cups for our liking in how dominant we've been in the last few years, and I think that'll be a big driver for this group. But again, like they won't. It's all external noise to them. But you know, I'm allowed to get pissed off and say, you know, it's not fair for the hard work that goes on that they're saying they've bought the success.
It's also like totally open to the English RFU and the French RFU to have central contracts, but they've decided not to do that. Head coach Granted, who is second in command, it seems like, to Razzie, to come. So that's a good.
But from the point of view of getting a fresh voice, fresh outlook on the game, I think that can only be a good thing. Fairness, like you look at how successful South Africa have been, and they definitely, you know, we've discussed that maybe, you know, sometimes aren't the prettiest to watch, but my God, are they effective? And why not get someone from, you know, inside that camp who's been leading that, like one of the best parts of their game, you know, to hopefully bring that over to Leinster and strengthen up our defence and make us one of the best defences in the world. You know, we've already a good defence, but it can only be a good thing, in my opinion. But like time will tell.
And the Goodman thing, like I don't know enough about the intricacies of attacking play. I know Lancaster would have been involved in a lot of it too. So would that be a significant loss? Would they be looking to replace him with somebody of similar standard if he was to go?
Yeah, is it rumour?
No, it's not confirmed. Ron O'Gara was the one who was talking about it at the weekend, saying, you know, it hasn't been confirmed, but I wouldn't be terribly surprised if he was part of the new New Zealand coaching ticket, and it seems to make sense.
Yeah, I suppose. I'd have to, unless it was actually legit and Rogers wasn't. You know, he loves a few mind games. But yeah, no, he's a massive. I have a lot of respect for him. I got my first cap with Goody back in the day, and he got his the week before, and he came full circle. I couldn't believe it had been 10 years, and it's amazing. Just again learning from different environments and what he brought in, and you know, he'd have a theme for every week, and it was just a different way of doing it. And you know, I talked about
to keep you fresh.
Fresh in the mind. Fresh in the mind, and I have like a focus for that week, and one that really kind of stuck with me, and it's on the point of that the young guys would have learned about, like a pit stop, you know, and how there's 20 people who might only be changing the bolt in a tyre, but if they don't do their job, then it doesn't work. You know, everyone is affected by that one person not doing their job, and you know, little things like that, and just, you know, instead of just going through the same, you know, these are the plays, this is the whatever, it was a different fresh outlook on it, and he had a different way of doing a lot of things. I think he's been an unbelievable addition, and you know, before he went away anyway, he would have been a very liked guy. So you're coming from, that's a good place to start, is to be liked. Not necessarily important, it's okay not to be liked, but he's an absolute legend, and he's very right. It's funny, very good way of looking at the game.
Like that's not just I have a really good idea about attacking shape this week, which is going to help us win the game, or
he has that too.
That's what I was going to say.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a much more full picture, which would suggest he's like very important.
Yes, I would say anyone in that coaching staff right now is very important, just because of the caliber of what you have. Like you've Robin McBride. You know, who's, you know, he was coming from the Lions and from Wales. He's incredible. Again, he was a different way of playing the game and a different way of doing things. Like
how do they make them all fit?
All the players,
all of the different like ideas, and you know what I mean. How do they all
cohesively? Yeah. Well, they're all in their own lane. You know, like right. yeah, you've different ways of doing things, but you have your team meeting, and then you break up into your you have your forwards, you have your backs, and then you have your attack and your like defense, so they're all kind of like separate entities, and everyone has their own area that they're an expert in, and they get to take control of that.
Obviously the position groups have their conversations about the specific elements of the game, but at some point when you're talking attack and defence, that's a cohesive, everybody in the squad has to understand the same thing, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be a moment in the game where we're going to go and we're going to attack when the ball in that unstructured environment. Is everybody in the same conversation for that? Is that like a group presentation with a PowerPoint basically?
Well, it depends. So if you're talking about open field defence, it's everyone. But if you're talking about set piece, like, we're not going to be talking about how the backs defend off a scrum, but it's important for say me and the back rows to understand the effect of what we're doing has on the backs.
So if you can go a specific direction, it gives everybody more or less time.
Exactly, yeah. And then like one thing that I learned in my career was to sit in on, usually whoever does the line out defence comes up with the line out defence plan, has quite a knock-on effect if you're not involved in it, because if you could go, you're trying to steal the ball all the time, it puts it on a team you're playing against has really good attack into the seam that I talked about in between the backs and the thing and the line out. You're snookered if you've gone chasing the ball up the front. They've won it anyway, and you're now on your own with no one around you, and you've like wingers and like scrum, with the likes of DuPont and like flooding into your channel. You're screwed. So you need to make sure that the line-out plan is aligned with the team you're playing against and not just this part of the game. Yeah. So like you figure out like the meetings you have to be in and the meetings you're not in, because a lot of them, well, not a lot of them, but half of them would be player-led and half of them would be coach-led, and that's encouraged from the coaches to have your own kind of unit meetings.
Right. Okay. That is really interesting, because it means that everybody then has responsibility and a deeper understanding of what the game plan is. So this week for Toulouse, for example, you were talking about, was it one of the Toulouse players talking about what they've learned? Richie Arnold, talking about what they've learned from the semi-final last year: win the collision, strong set piece, and just defence. But obviously that's not going to be enough.
Yeah, I thought it interesting, and the difference in the kind of like the French way of playing rugby versus Ireland would think their way through a game as well as physicality, all of the nuts and bolts of a game, but also we're trying to evolve every week, and we're thinking our way through the game. And I feel maybe that's a turning point for them in terms of they're like, okay, well, definition of insanity, try the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. They've had a few losses against us in the Aviva, and they're like, okay, what do we need to do here? We're trying the same thing, it's not working. Just backing our talent and our flair.
Yeah.
What deeper? How much deeper do we need to look into this? So interesting take. It'll be more interesting to see how they action it. And like, if you look at lineouts, you can't defend everywhere, and if you try to defend everywhere, you're defending nowhere, because you just get pulled around and you win it. And you'll notice a lot of teams will let the other team win it at the front, because if you let them win at the front, at least you can have a plan.
Yeah.
So cause you're like, we're giving them the front, we have a plan, but you could also come up with moves of, okay, we know they're going to give us the front, okay, what can we do to manipulate that?
That's where you see the short line.
Exactly, yeah. And also you see, I talked about in the Ireland game where they had a maul, they got it moving forward, and then they crossfield kicked because they had everyone sucked in. Or like, if you can get the maul moving forward at the front, all of a sudden you have the whole pitch to attack against for the backs, but you have to commit the forwards by getting the maul moving forward. So there's ways around everything, but it's a game of chess in seeing what will they come up with to try pressure Leinster. You've all the different kind of matchups. It's gonna be a great game.
It does have the potential to be a really great game. It does have also the potential for Leinster to lose. Like, this is, according to the bookmakers, it's not really
7-point game. Yeah. Where are the vulnerabilities? Where will Toulouse say, okay, we can actually hurt them here?
Well, I think any great game, what makes it great is both teams can lose. I think, like, going in assuming we're going to win would be incredibly dangerous, especially against the players they have, like some of the best players in the world. So, it's not going to be in their heads that, we might lose this. It's like, we don't play well, we're definitely going to lose this. So where can they lose? Yeah, look at that French-Ireland game in the Aviva, like one of the best games, probably of the year, probably in a long time. And it was just a slugfest. And I think like that's what I'd love to see, is an absolute slugfest of like two teams, all-out attack, and at the same time trying to manipulate each other with their defence in certain ways, going after each other at set piece. I don't want to be too general here. Scrum, I feel like they will probably try target that. Not that it's a weakness, but I feel like they might try target it in past kind of big French games. It seems to be a way for them to get access. That's very traditional talking, but you tend to go back in the big cup games. You tend to go back to sorts. They've, Arnold has said about been clever in how they defend off line out and open phase. We'll see if they've come up with a plan to deal with Ireland's phase play attack. I would be confident to think that they are oversimplifying how many variations that we'd be able to play off of the phase attack. But again, that's a subtle bit of confidence that I'd have that they're thinking it's a lot simpler than it is. There's probably more options.
To people. So in terms of the variations that we can have off phase attack, it means that we can do multiple different things no matter what we see. Yeah, so when you have a forward running to the line and he's a guy either side of him and you have the out half in behind, he's four options there. He can carry the ball, he can pass it inside to the guy. If the inside defender comes to do a double hit, he'll dump it inside and make a line break. If the outside guy comes in, he'll give it to the outside forward. And if this guy bites in, he'll play it out the back to the 10, and then the next four guys in the defence are screwed. A lot of teams can look at that, and if you don't drill it properly and do it for long enough, your only options might be carry or play it out the back to the out half, and I fear that not fear, but like if you think that's all that there is to it, you're going to get yourself in a bit of trouble. But listen, there's plenty of variations and options off of rucks and attacking kicks that I think both teams will have, and I just hope that the really it's dry days, like the really talented guys can play and put on a show.
Leinster don't want it to be they don't want it to be unstructured though, because if it is, Dupont just comes into his own. Is that?
No, I would say like
you want it to be a slugfest.
Yeah, there's something about like being in a game like that where it's incredibly good to play, even though you're playing with fire in terms of like the likes of Pont and Tamac and all. But like
that's why you were born to play.
Yeah, exactly. I said like my favorite weeks when I was playing was prepping for weeks like this, because you had to be so mentally switched on because you were playing against such talent, as well as all the normal stuff you have to prep for your week of knowing all your roles and all the different bits. And bloody remembering to catch and to do all the like simple things, but it's just never switching off for a second with those kind of talented guys, because they can make something out of absolutely nothing. And I think there's a real satisfaction out of winning those sorts of games. You don't want to have it easy.
And this is someone just coming from like I'm in and out of rugby. The other three provinces with Leinster's dominance. Does everyone in Ireland want Leinster to win this game? No. So where would the split be of the Connacht, Ulster and Munster fans on this?
Well, like I'd be shocked if they wanted Leinster to win. Like
so it's more of there is actually a rivalry in the sense we need to get up to Leinster's level, and we don't want them to kind of be dominant over the rest of us.
I think you'll be doing well to find one person in Limerick or Cork that is going to be shouting for Leinster.
One
ever in the history. And Galway, like Belfast, I very, very much doubt it, and that's fine. That's how it should be. That's how it should be. Yeah, and like I respect that. Like it's a tribe mentality, and I'm okay with that. Like it's what makes the competition when you play the derby game so good, and the hostile environment and
what are the fourth provinces in the top 7 in the URC? Is it so like if there is a rising tide lifts boats, like the standard of Irish rugby is insane at the moment, really?
Yeah. No, it is. It's good. Like, listen, as I said a couple of weeks ago, it's probably one of the best times to be an Irish rugby supporter. We're flying it, but we've won now the Grand Slam and Six Nations, amazing. But there's bigger fish to fry for the country and for the club guys. This is the pinnacle of their year, so nothing's won yet, and unfortunately you can finish top of the league and win every game in the URC and until you get to the final, it doesn't matter really.
Speaking of bigger fish to fry, right? With Sexton injured and we're uncertain about when he's going to be back or available, big opportunity for Ross Byrne just to remind everybody that there's no real debate anymore, that he has cemented himself as the heir apparent, and that's why games like this, they obviously have meaning in and of themselves, but they do have much more greater significance as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of subplots. But I feel like Ross has played in a lot of big games in the last couple of years, and they've probably gone under the radar, because they were kind of like the first knockout game, or like even semi-finals and stuff. But I'm 100% confident that it'll be a seamless change for him to be in there, and no one's saying that he's Johnny, like he's his own player, he's his own attributes. Johnny be missed in his own way, but I feel like Ross is gonna really cause a lot of problems. Well, I'd say definitely he's definitely got better attributes. Like his crossfield kicking, I'd say is better. And I'm sure there's another couple that are escaping me now, but he's definitely he's a different, like the last day we were talking about the different attributes of the different out halves. You've Frawley and he brings something different to Harry, and it's good to have different flavours at out half, because it means you find the right fit for your team, and that's what you go with, and whatever style you want to play. But this like the last 3 years, I think Ross Byrne's really grown into that role as a leader off the pitch as well as on the pitch. And
everybody does that at their own pace, right? Because I remember talking to Lancaster at the start of his career at Leinster, and he was talking about how there was a big piece of work to be done on the young leaders who were coming through, and somebody like Gary Ringrose and even Robbie Henshaw. Like, they were quiet. They're naturally quiet, but they're not anymore. You can hear Ringrose talking, and you can see him having evolved into somebody who would be a natural captain if it was. But 3 or 4 years ago, that wasn't the case, right? And that's just how this all works. I can only imagine how difficult it is to be seemingly the number 2 out half, and then your younger brother comes along and everybody's talking about him, and then eventually you get your opportunity and you're ready for it at this stage. So it's been quite the comeback.
Yeah, and I think it's been great for Irish rugby that we've gotten Leinster and Irish rugby, that we've gotten so many.
Leinster now, isn't it?
Pardon?
Leinster and Irish rugby is the same thing.
That depends who you're talking to. Well, yeah. So I think it's been great for everyone that they've gotten the opportunities that they have. It's given Ross time to mature as a player, as a person, off the field as well, because that matters, and time in the saddle. Do you know what? And sometimes it's okay to be written off, because it lights a fire in you, of proving everyone wrong. And now I'm speaking for him here, but I know I'd be using that as motivation. And
was he ever written off though, or was it just like?
I think so. Where's he going to go? Could he end up at Ulster? Like the like Harry Byrne was effectively anointed as the successor, and he's like, well, hang on, I've literally played like 200 games.
And it was Joey. Then it was Harry, and then it was like, was Frawley for a brief while, and then Crowley. It's been a long time of kind of like looking for everyone else but him, and I'm sure he's using that as fuel. He's never said it out loud,
but it's probably in his head.
But
he's your competitor.
You put yourself in his shoes. What would you be thinking? You'd be exactly the same. You're a competitor, and like you got to use that fuel for something good. You go 2 ways with it. It either beats you up or you use it as fuel. And like looking at how far he's come now, he has to be using that as fuel.
What an opportunity that we have.
Exactly. Yeah, and if you look at the likes of Joey Carberry now, like that's the sort of fuel now he needs to use. Where he was in the opposition, but now it's all of a sudden it's an opportunity for him now to prove everyone wrong. And that's the way you kind of have to look at the setbacks.
Luke Fitzgerald saying that he might be better focusing as a fullback for the rest of his career. Have you any thoughts on that, or?
Like he was a like an unbelievable fullback when I played with him last, and he's moved down to Munster, and he's been the second fiddle Irish out half to probably the best of all time, and there was never a question about him not being a good enough out half until he's a little bit of an injury run and a dip in form, so he can play either, and that's the benefit for him.
Can I just ask you about John McKee? One of the other reasons I've little sympathy with Leinster getting everything, like John McKee's from Belfast and could easily be playing for Ulster if they scouted it properly and developed him as a player. They didn't, and now here he is come off the bench. And what level is he at? How close is he to, because it seems pretty seamless at the moment, but
yeah, John's like great character, came in and it's funny, I was that like a little annoying eager beaver of coming in, but all he wanted to do was learn. He went, when you train, we'd only ever, we never really do full contact too often, but you're going at about 70% and it'd be whatever, and when you come in as a young fella, and I was this young fella for a long time,
90%,
you're always going at 90 to 100%. So he comes in and especially I see him in your position, you're a little kind of runt, but I have so much respect for the work he did off the field to fast track him to where he is now, because he's so much further along than certainly I was at his age, but than he would be if he didn't put in all the work off the field, because he has the on-field attributes. He's strong, he's aggressive, he's a good game understanding, but he's a student of the game. So
it sounds like he smashed you a few times in training. You're like, what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly.
And after training.
Yeah. So one of the, I listened, there's plenty of them, and I have to say, back in the day, it was myself, Dan Levy and Tyg Byrne were the annoying ones, and we'd get the head poked off us every Tuesday. So, and rightly so, looking back, we didn't realise how annoying we were until,
that's very important, right?
Yeah, keeping everyone sharp.
Yeah, totally. You need those characters of training, otherwise training gets stale.
Yeah.
Sorry, we almost have no time for this, but Jack Conan had a really interesting piece at the weekend where they found, I think it was assist was the description of it, when they were looking for something else in one of his imaging that he was having done. It's a fairly remarkable discovery, and his form has improved massively since, because he was tired from it. The strain and stress that you guys put your bodies through, if you stopped to think about it, you'd be pretty concerned about it.
Yeah, it's it's rugby is it's a very it's a violent attritional game, but like all kind of combat sports, it's just it's good to watch the kind of gladiators go to war and all that side of things. So it's a hard game on your body and on your mind, and not easy for him. He'd been coming off the highs of that Lions tour. He's a test starter, and an unbelievable player, and it's definitely been a very hard year mentally for him, more than physically. Now, I didn't know that he was running on empty, but mentally, when you see someone come and take your jersey, and that's what Caelan did. He took it. It was his form that got it. It's not easy, especially when he was the main man months before, not even a year before. It was months before. He was the best player in the British and Irish Isles for that position, and it's not an easy pill to swallow. But at least he's gotten to the root of what was holding his energy back, and he can get back now to pushing for that position.
So who plays in the back row? If Baird is fit this weekend, what do you expect to happen? Looks like Baird will be fit. Looks like Van der Fleer will be fit. So suddenly they have everybody available.
Yeah. I would say they will go with Josh, at 7, obviously, Caelan 8, and probably Jack at 6, with Baird off the bench covering back row and second row.
Right.
Now, I could be wrong on that, but that's probably what I do. I think Jack gives you a good liner option. He's bulky, he's good. He's a really good 6. And then I think keep Caelan in at number 8. He's still in flying form, and hopefully Josh can kind of pick up where he left off It's only been a short injury, so
Yeah.
it's pretty straightforward, that ankle injury. Like it's probably the most common one in rugby, and it's like they've done it about 50 times, or not 50 times, about 100 times.
Right.
Many French coming over actually for the game.
I have no idea. No idea.
interesting,
Yeah, and the French supporters are class. They always bring
game
proper colour.
It's amazing this year, I thought.
Yeah, love it.
James, good stuff. Enjoy the game. Thanks a million.
Thanks,
So,
man.
James Tracy giving us his thoughts on that. Right. Don't miss all the action in Rugby Daily today in your OTB podcast network, bringing you everything you need to know about rugby. It's all in partnership with Deliveroo. Deliveroo has some great bundles and deals. So open the app, make your choice, and watch your rider come to you. Deliveroo, food, we get it. Here's Fiona Hayes and Jerry Thornley last night talking Munster in South Africa. We're back with hurling next with Michael Verney.
You know, it's very important, I think, for them that they didn't get relegated to the Challenge Cup for the first time in 29 years. I think it would have been just disastrous for the brand at a time when Limerick hurling is booming, when young fans are supporting the hurling team more. For Munster to have slipped into the Challenge Cup would have been particularly damaging for them, given they are two-time winners of the Champions Cup, the Heineken Champions Cup, and that's very much the competition which has defined them in the professional era. So also when you think of what Roundtree and Prendergast and Leamy and the coaching staff have tried to do there were bound to be teething problems. They had such a slow start. To ultimately have their backs to the wall in South Africa and get a win and a draw to squeak to absolutely nail down Champions Cup qualification, 5th place. Not many people would have seen that coming into the last 2 weeks of the season. And it just gives a little bit of an imprimatur to the whole Roundtree Prendergast regime. You can see their game has evolved significantly after those difficult problems at the start of the season. And it's I think it almost they won't view it as a shot to nothing, but it's almost a free hit now against Glasgow. They've secured their place in the playoffs, and more importantly, in many respects, I think for the brand and for the finances, they've secured Champions Cup rugby next season as well. And you know, Glasgow have a semi-final in the Challenge Cup next weekend, whereas Munster can rest up after their exertions in South Africa. And I know Glasgow have unbeaten in 17 home games, and Munster have fallen there before in the knockout stages, but it's a very tricky venue for sure. But they'll go there with a renewed sense of optimism now, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with that as well, Jerry, like it's very unusual for a team to go over, and they did struggle at scrum time to be able to go over to South Africa and come away points, albeit struggling at scrum time as well. Like Archer was immense around the pitch, and Lockman in particular got pinned a couple of times by the referee. I thought
Right, that's available for you in the OTB Rugby feed. Now, Michael Verney is with us to talk about the hurling at the weekend. Michael, good morning to you. How are you?
Gentlemen, how are we?
Not only that, preview and punches sound today in the jack of so many trades. Only Fools and Horses fan, snooker fan.
Yeah, I was expecting you to greet me with an alright, Marco.
Loves the darts. All rounder really.
Yeah. Sure, listen, you have to have many coals in the fire, don't you?
Is it 20-1 Willie Mullins for winning more than 12, or is it more than 16 great Group 1s this week? There's a headline in one of the papers today.
Yeah,
it's unparalleled, unprecedented levels of domination, even by his standards.
Yeah, it's outrageous. I think it was 33-1 to win the 12 Grade 1s this week. He probably won't, but he probably won't be a million miles off. He'd probably hit double figures anyway. It's a mad week. He'd 19 winners, I think, 2 years ago. He'd probably hit 15 or 16 this week. It's nuts, really.
It's down to 20-1. That's according to the Times.
Are you there this week, Michael?
I am indeed, John.
It's not the worst job the sports journalists be going from like high profile Gaelic games a weekend and into Punchestown and back again the following weekend. Could be worse.
Good time of the year, in fairness.
Well, it's like this. I thought he was getting the short straw. I've been sent to O'Connor Park for the footballers the other day, and I tell you, that was one of the great days. It was a brilliant day, and it's probably a little bit unexpected. And I was
long live the provincial championship.
Yeah, well, I tell you something, and it's weird because our semi-final has potential ramifications for Cork and Kildare as well. So I think it's an unintended consequence of the provincial championships now that other people are looking over their shoulders thinking if X or Y wins here, we could be in the Tailteann Cup. So it is definitely made things a bit more interesting. But funnily enough, it's nearly the early stages that make it more interesting. The finals probably won't be as maybe worthwhile or as meaningful as some of the earlier games.
On that point, right, this is the time of the year where we get to have these conversations about the tune-up that is the Leinster Hurling Championship, particularly for Kilkenny and potentially Galway this year. Let's wait and see how Dublin recover from the draw up in Belfast. Meanwhile, the bear pit that is the Munster Hurling Championship is going to eradicate two of the best teams in the country from All-Ireland contention. It does feel as if maybe we could revisit this a little bit.
Yeah, well, if you were picking a top 7 in the country, 5 of them are definitely going to be from Munster, realistically, and Kilkenny and Galway are going to be thrown in whatever order you want. It could be second or third, it could be third and fourth, it could be fourth and fifth or whatever, but Munster are definitely going to have 5 of those top 7, and it's a situation where Kilkenny can ease TJ Reid back into action. I know they're playing Galway this weekend and he won't be eased in this weekend, but you can nearly, there's games in Leinster where you can afford to give guys game time. You do not get that luxury in Munster at all. As you say, it's a bear pit, a shark tank. You're going in, if you lost last weekend, you're under serious pressure going in this weekend, and it's a bit skewed. The only thing is about the provincials in hurling and football, the Munster hurling title still has so much standing, and the final last year would tell you exactly what it meant to the two teams involved. It's still huge to win Munster. It's still big to win Leinster, but not as big as Munster. So until that's somewhat degraded, I'm not sure when that change is going to come, because it is a massive, the Munster teams would see winning Munster as the second biggest thing that we can do this year.
I buy that, right? And down to the point where if Clare had won last year, Brian Lohan, his job would be safe for another 5 years after that. But there is a bit where at some point somebody in Munster is going to realise that some team is going to go out having maybe drawn 2 matches, 1-1, and still you're not in the All-Ireland series. Whereas in this year, for example, it could be a mediocre Dublin or a mediocre Wexford team given their injuries, and caveating that with the injuries that they have, and it's obviously an evolutionary Dublin team, are going to be in an All-Ireland series, and that's just not fair.
Yeah, listen, I don't know when it's going to happen, but realistically it's putting 10 or 11 teams together. Well, probably going to have an even number, splitting them into 2 groups that are equally as cutthroat as the other, and 2 to 3 come out, or it's a Champions League format style. That's what's going to happen probably eventually. Don't see it happening in the next couple of years, but it is going to happen eventually. There's calls at the moment, when you hear calls for the 4th in Munster to play the 3rd in Leinster, that's so messy, but that's kind of where we are at the minute, just given how. But
that would be better, a wild card weekend. I mean, they have it in all the
sports.
Well,
it's also the nonsense of the Leinster Championship. Galway is far more, in terms of location, all that is far more in tune with Clare hurling. Galway playing in Innis, Galway playing in Limerick is just down the road. Galway's rivals are basically in Kilkenny and Wexford, which are essentially miles away. So it is an anachronism as it is anyway.
Yeah, it is a bit mad when you think about Galway travelling to play Wexford as it did last year, or even Wexford travelling to play Galway. You're travelling, 2/3 of the country to play somebody that's within your own province. Do you know what I mean? It is a bit mad. We also have Antrim Antrim make a ridiculous trip down to Wexford Park this weekend, and I know we talked about Wexford and Dublin fighting out for that 3rd spot, but they've kind of ruffled a few feathers already last weekend. They should have beaten Dublin up in Corrigan Park, and they'll half fancy their chances going down to Wexford Park at the weekend as well. That's lit up Leinster a small bit. If they hadn't done that, it would probably be predictable enough, and you're just waiting for the result of Dublin and Wexford to see who gets 3rd. But that has definitely made it more interesting, allied to the fact that Lee Chin and Damien Reck didn't play last weekend. And I was just looking at GA going, I was looking at Darragh Egan chatting to Chin, and he has an AC joint injury in his shoulder, and you're just thinking, they're 4 or 5 down. Will I bring him in, or will I make sure that he's 20 or 30% better off next weekend when we have a serious banana skin coming down to Wexford Park?
Yeah, look, if he's fit, it's a complete game changer for them for all sorts of reasons in that game against Antrim. I do want to just ask you about the John Kiley anger in the aftermath of the game, where he's talking about the bullshit that was spoken about Limerick. I can see his points, but I do also think that that's just the price of being successful. And I suspect that the message that he was giving out was as much for his own players as it was for the media and everybody else. It's not going to stop people saying Limerick are still overwhelming short price favourites to be the All-Ireland champions this year, and actually they probably got exactly what they wanted from the game at the weekend.
Sunday was the perfect scenario, wasn't it? They won a game that they should have lost, and they've got all the ramifications of losing a big game the stick that Kylie has to beat them with now, but they didn't actually lose the game. The aura is still there. Limerick can win playing that badly, putting up a tally that they hadn't put, like a paltry tally that they hadn't put up in years, with 14 men against a team that are flying and a team that looked to have them tactically figured out. So to me, it's the perfect situation for Kylie. It was an unusual one. We were only chatting on the throw-in pod in the indoor yesterday. We were just saying it's not something that Cody would have done. Cody wouldn't have made any reference to, anything that was being said, or it wouldn't have even said that any bit of it had seeped into his camp. So it was interesting to hear that as well. But just a bit, that's probably a bit of frustration, because you're trying to almost cocoon your players, and you have people saying that they're going to win 6 in a row before they've even poked the ball to win 4 in a row. And those are just the little elements of complacency that you just do not want to set into your camp. They're disastrous consequences within your camp if they do set in. And I think it's the perfect scenario for them. And as well as that, tactically, as I said, it looked like Waterford figured them out, and Davy Fitz deserves huge credit, and he gets his criticism from me included. But he obviously had planned that down to the nth degree, and they just couldn't put the ball over the bar with the chances that they had. They should have realistically gotten something out of that game. And Paul Kinnerk is going to be so frustrated with this idea of that somebody hasn't figured out, and now they're going to be thinking, okay, every team we play are going to adopt similar tactics to Waterford did on Sunday. What are we going to do to counteract that? And what they do to counteract it is going to be fascinating.
I thought Kilkenny had tried to do that in the league final, and Limerick had just thought their way around it, whereas obviously with the step up from Waterford, maybe it's just the fact that it was the Munster Championship, I don't know, and obviously it wasn't the full Kilkenny side, but it looked like whatever physicality Kilkenny had brought, Waterford had taken it to a slightly higher level, which maybe they're one of the few teams, maybe Galway are also capable of doing that, are they?
There was a couple of things that they did. Nicky Quaid has obviously got the ball in his hand 40 to 45 times per game. Every time he looked up, Waterford had somebody standing in one of the wings, particularly Hegarty's wing. He literally could not puck the ball down that wing. They refused to give Barry Nash any sharp puck out. So it's mad. They deemed Sean Finn the lesser of the playmakers in the full back line. They refused to let Barry Nash get any ball from the sharp puck outs. They almost gave it to Finn, and would take the consequences of whatever he did with the ball. I remember at one stage, and Shane Dowden highlighted on the Sunday game, Desi Hutchinson was just basically tracking Nash's run. They refused to let him get ahead up a steam, and Limerick's a lot of options that they would normally have, they didn't have on Sunday. Kilkenny tried some things in the league final, but it was in a different stratosphere of what Waterford were doing the other day. And it's just unfortunate from their respect that they emptied themselves and have nothing to show for it, and have to get themselves back up for a team that didn't play in the opening weekend against when they play Cork this weekend now. So that's going to be a fascinating one.
The minute or minute and a half between the penalty miss and Hegarty sending off, I thought was just amazing. And I was only watching it here. The intensity of the tackling, and I think that's kind of been a little bit lost in the second yellow, because tackles were absolutely flying in. The crowd was going wild, and the Waterford fans were really, really, getting behind them. And there's obviously this animosity almost towards Limerick now, that Limerick are so good that you want to take them down. But that intensity, I'm not trying to exonerate Hegarty, but there were so many tackles going in at that time, and you do wonder now, he is a bit of a marked man, in terms of the yellow cards and the reds that he's getting.
Yeah, the intensity was something else, Johnny. Yeah, it's kill or be killed out there now. If you stand back, you're a dead man walking, basically. It's funny, Hegarty's first yellow was for Moughton at the referee, which I'm sure to be very disappointed with, because if it was another robust tackle or something like that, you'd say fair enough. He got 2 yellows. Now the tackle on Conor Gleeson for the second yellow, he creamed him. That was
there were nearly 2 reds in 10 seconds there,
Yeah, that was borderline. That was, if there was something between yellow and red, that was probably it. And then we had the whole hoo-ha with the Waterford mentor coming down and getting involved, which is just he made a point. He moved a fair distance to get involved, which is just, there's no place for that. But Limerick hit the next 3 points after the sending off. Their ability to react and adapt mid-game is unparalleled. And just on this, I don't know if you follow the boxing much, boys, but with the time De La Hoya nearly beat Mayweather, all the talk was that he had the blueprint to beat him, and it was just, I think it was a split decision points defeat or something like that. So everybody thinks now that Waterford have showed the blueprint to beat Limerick, and I just think that's fascinating. Dangerous. Yeah, very, very dangerous. And if it's a sort of idea where people think, we can just copy exactly what Waterford did and we're going to get the same results, they're going to get a rude awakening come the next couple of weeks.
Speculation in the papers this morning that the Seamus Flanagan incident was dealt with at the time, that they thought it was accidental and that he is therefore going to be free to play this weekend.
Yeah, I was chatting to Colm Keys about this yesterday. Colm is always really good in these scenarios. He's got great contacts and he talks to people about, what's going on there. But apparently that was dealt with or spoken about at the time. So it's not something that they didn't see.
Right.
So it was spoken about at the time, and by all accounts, the conversations now mid-game are all recorded as well. The way he described it was to me, it's like the black box on an airplane. You can go back and hear everything that was said during the game. So essentially that seems to be dealt with. It's not something that they missed and can be looked back at retrospectively now. And by all accounts, Declan Hannon, who kind of limped off, he's going to miss probably their next 2 games anyway, and might be back for the Cork game with a groin injury as well. Like, they have great panel depth and squad depth, but at the end of the day, they don't have a player like him that can be the quarterback and orchestrate things. So how they react in his absence will be interesting too.
The worry for John Kiely might be just that it seeps into the narrative now, and it seeps into referees' heads that Limerick are playing on the edge. They're also so physically big that if the likes of Kyle Hayes just mistimes a tackle very, very marginally, he could just leather a fella without even trying. And if that seeps in, John Kiely doesn't really want to be in games where you're down to 14 men for nearly a second half.
Oh God, no, definitely not. And if you look at Hayes already has a red from the league, and as does William O'Donoghue. So if they were to pick up reds again, they'd actually miss 2 games, which would have disastrous consequences, particularly if it was from the Munster final onwards. Now, this is not a new narrative. It's been out there for a while. But given the size of them, there is a duty of care when you're going in tackling someone that's 5'10", like you're 6'5". If you meet them, what should be shoulder to shoulder for 6'5" on 6'5" is not shoulder to shoulder, and you could decapitate them. So there's definitely a duty of care on them there. But I don't think this narrative is anything new. And generally, the last few years, it's been said, Hegarty needs to be careful or he'll get a red come championship. The reds in championship have been few and far between, to be fair. I know Hegarty was sent off against Clare last year, and he kind of really minded himself there after while still being robust enough. So I think it'll just help them probably reset a small bit and maybe realise they're probably even more marked men than they thought beforehand.
That's why I think it's perfect for them in a way that they completely underperformed. They still get through the game.
It kind of looked like they were going to win to me as well, even at 14 men. I know Lost and Gleeson had a good goal chance. But other than that, they were essentially leading the whole game, and they kind of had them at 3-4 points for nearly the entire second half as well. They had them at arm's length, I thought.
Yeah, I think this is their slowest or lowest scoring return since the 2019 All-Ireland semi-final. This is very low in comparison to what they're used to. They missed a penalty that Gillan would rarely miss. Gillan missed a goal chance that he would rarely miss. Do you know what I mean? It's just a lot of things happened in this game, and Limerick still won.
Sorry, Gillan should get the penalty. Then there isn't a red card because it was a follow-on, and then that would have been 6 or 7 points, game over.
Yeah. So I just think there's a lot of things happen in this game that will not happen again.
Yeah, and look, on the other side, I saw several people complaining that it was square ball for the penalty, and so therefore it should have been a free out, and and the missed free down the other end. So I can see if you're making a case for both teams to make the case. It's just that they do need to step up their performance. They have proven in the past that they're able to step up their performance even within games. So that's why this week's game is really fascinating. Clare are very much up against it, and they've caused their own problems with the goalkeeping issues last week.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we've probably all been in games or watched games where you're just thinking, you make a couple of mistakes and you're always chasing. You're just always chasing, and they're always there. That was always the difference. And you have to feel sorry for Eamon Foodie, because I looked at him playing Munster League this year. I looked at him playing League as well. He's a very good keeper. It was a difficult kind of ball that came in from Jason Ford's sideline, and it's just several different things added on to it. That sharp puck out that he took and took the return. Probably when you're after making a mistake earlier in the game, you probably just go along. You probably just play safe in that scenario and get your confidence back up. And then there was the puck out to Conlon as well. I wasn't sure if he was going to be hauled off at half time. So in fairness to Brian Lohan, he stuck with him. But that was the only difference between the two teams, lads. Clare were brilliant at times. It was just those mistakes were always there. there'll be no problem with them trying to get up for playing Limerick in the Gaelic grounds on Saturday evening. I can guarantee you that. That obviously Connacht was with Clare 10 years ago when they won the All-Ireland. Angus O'Brien, who's with Limerick now, was with Clare as well. Alan Cunningham is Clare native too. There's the rivalries either side of the Shannon are massive, and I don't think they'll have any problem getting up for them. And they drew with them 3 times last year. It took extra time for Limerick to beat them in the Munster final. And I don't think Saturday is do or die in a sense for Clare. I think they can still get through if they beat Waterford and Cork. They can still get through potentially on 4 points. Like, they're not going to think that going into Saturday night, and they'll leave everything out there. But I still think they can get through in third on 4 points.
Yeah, you wouldn't be terribly surprised if this game was a draw again. Any Punchestown tips for us, Michael? Before we
I always think Punchestown is kind of a tricky one. You're kind of gauging some of the Cheltenham runners and how much it's taken out of them. I just tend to like, how many odds on favourites have we today and tomorrow and over the next couple of days? I tend to go for something that goes in a bit fresh. Like Gentleman Demise going against an Energumen today. You couldn't see an Energumen been beaten, but then you have a fresh horse coming in against a horse that, you know, had fair exertions at Cheltenham. I like Emmett's horse in the novice chase. Actually, Willie has 4 in it. What's the pronunciation, John? Ferran Illy, is it?
Ferran Illy, yeah.
He's actually ran in a bumper. He's ran over hurdles and he's done chases all within the space of 4 months, which has to be unheard of.
His first one over hurdles was in a grade 2. His first one over fences was a month later in a senior graded chase. Yeah. My last question for you, though, before Gerard rudely interrupted, because we haven't even spoken about Galway.
Well, we're out of time.
Out of time. One word, who is the biggest rival to Limerick this year?
Themselves.
Oh,
that's a good answer.
Platonic. Very good. Wow. Bring in the philosophy. Good stuff, Michael.
Thanks, gents.
That is a good answer.
Michael Verney there.
Big one word, but it's one word, yeah.
Yeah. A couple of quick comments for you. Michael Cowan says, I feel like the narrative around Wexford's demise is premature. Chin and wreck, massive losses, killed ourselves last weekend with poor puck out strategy. Hurled Galway off the field at times.
Yeah, missed a penalty.
Purely on injuries. That's why they are where they are at the moment. But they don't have anything like the depth that other counties have, and that's why you would say that they're not in contention until those players all come back, and they all have to come back and be at their absolute peak straight away and hit the ground running. Colin McCarthy says, I'm expecting an almighty reaction from Limerick on Saturday at home. Clare and a few lads like Lynch and Hayes and Gillan with a point to prove after a quiet game. We shall see.
There is an element of that, like the little wounds that they'll have and what they'll be listening to this week. Yeah, it's probably like that's a great start to championship where you didn't play that well but still won, and people are questioning you. You don't really want to be steamrolling teams either.
No, look, it's either exactly like the Dubs where they were able to win games without playing well at the peak, or it's the beginning of the end.
Yeah,
and like
clearly it isn't.
That's why we want the whole thing to unfold.
And Waterford offered something different as well.
Shifty lad, what do you think of the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, this is big news. Yeah, the just end the season Jets. This has been speculated upon since before the end of last season. The suggestion is that Rodgers he is a bit beyond his best, but the Jets really, really good defensive unit last season. Their quarterback they brought in. He was a very, very top draft pick. Zach just hasn't really worked out, and they defended him. But the Rodgers thing has been a badly kept secret. Fascinating though. The Jets fans are going to finally believe. Can Aaron Rodgers, the veteran, bring them to the promised land? It's going to be an interesting season.
Aaron Rodgers is a big supporter of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is running for president on an anti-vax platform.
Yeah.
It's going to be an interesting season for the Jets.
It's like a man in Succession. You're trying to hover around the 1%.
8:54 this morning. It is time for the power rankings.
Some of these critics, these pundits.
Generally speaking, I'd be a fan of off the ball. Exactly, and like Tommy knows football, obviously I listen to football pod the odd time. And
when I was looking at the power rankings, and I thought that Jesus Owen must still be feeling the effects of these mushrooms.
But they just dismiss you like you know you have nothing to do with the bloody occasion.
Tommy Rooney, come on down, baby. How
morning,
are you?
Jer. Morning, Johnny.
We look
like good. How are you doing?
We look like we've just discovered you there, making last-minute changes.
Who, me?
Yeah.
No, not at all. No last-minute changes. Changes were made last night before midnight.
When was the last time Meath were not in the championship in April 23rd?
probably the 18.
Well, come on, Johnny. It's a new sort of system. Look at Meath fans have gotten used to being knocked out. Yeah, look, I don't know how long he's going to talk about Meath. Will we get through the rankings here?
Yeah, okay. Number 33.
No changes from 33 to 25.
Okay, so I'll just run through it. 33 London, 32 Waterford, 31 Carlow, 30 Wexford, 28 Tip, 29 Longford, 27 Leitrim, 26 New York, 25 Laois. Laois could be deducted some points for not showing up.
There's a typo there. Tip are behind Longford. So
sorry.
I don't know where that issue came from. It might have been me last night doing it late. And there's a dog with a bone and off the ball, Arthur O'D, who reckons New York should be lower, but they're the only team on that list to have won a championship game so far this year, so they're staying in 26th.
All right. 24th. Wicklow,
yeah.
23.
We've got a couple of movements.
Yeah, you go through the movements there quickly.
Yeah, so Antrim and Limerick have both slid back one. Limerick are 22nd, Antrim are 23rd. Sligo moved up 2 to 21st. Sligo fans have probably complained that they aren't further. They bet New York. They're into a Connacht final. I reckon that Sligo could eventually turn themselves into a Division 2 team in a couple of years. Look at the success they're having in under 20 level and minors and schools.
On a point of information, should Sligo not be grandfathered into 16 now that we know that they're in Sam Maguire?
No. They'll eventually the rankings will eventually correct themselves as the summer goes on. We'll see how they get on in the round robin series. They'll eventually move down. There's only so many changes we can make there.
But they have to be in the top 16 officially because they're in the top 16 because of the way that the system is structured.
Sligo aren't getting moved 9 places in the power rankings. You're not going to make a mockery of these power rankings. That's not happening this year. Just because the provincial councils want to keep the provinces, it doesn't mean that the sanctity of the power rankings have to be destroyed.
I think we should reflect the madness of the provincial councils. The absolute buck madness.
We know that's going to happen. We know that.
Okay.
It's a Trojan horse. That's what they all are in round robin series. It's a Trojan horse. So the provinces will be dead at some stage. Fermanagh 20th, down 2 places. They were poor against Derry. Offaly are up 1 to 19th. Meath are back 2 to 18th. Their slide has continued. And Cavan are down 2 to 17th.
Stop. Fix this now.
Fix what?
Who just played in the championship?
It's not all about that. It's like if Offaly beat Louth at the weekend, they'll go up 2 places. Like they'll have beaten a team like Offaly, better team who were already 16th in the power rankings. Like Meath were 8th to 15th coming into this game. Tommy, it was absolutely ludicrous.
Tommy, you played tennis. You played tennis in the summer, in the winter. I understand that you're
in the winter in Cratloe. Yeah.
A demon tennis player, right?
Not at all.
Well, a long misspent youth. Instead of playing snooker, you played tennis. Fair enough, right? But isn't there a ladder in every tennis club in the country where you play somebody, you challenge them, and if you beat them on the ladder, you take their position on the ladder? Isn't there?
This isn't a ladder. This is the power rankings. It's not a ladder. If Meath and Offaly were to meet in the Tailteann Cup in 3 weeks' time, Offaly would probably beat them again, at the minute. Hey! If they met in 6 weeks' time, maybe Meath will have turned it around. But this is not what it's about. There are teams. But Jared, there are teams in the power rankings who are above others. It's not just about a win at the weekend.
Offaly are ahead of Meath in the official and unofficial and everybody's mind in the country because they just beat them and it wasn't really close. Offaly at the end got a little bit like, oh Jesus, we're about to beat Meath.
It was an alarming result, 100%. For Meath football, but it was coming. Absolutely, it was coming. 100%.
Meath should be behind Offaly. These are now incorrect.
Like you can cry about that all you want. I have Meath in 18th place, and they deserve to be in 18th place.
You don't appreciate the sanctity of the betting markets. Meath were 8 to 15 favourites. If they played Offaly next weekend, they'd still be favourites.
I'm not sure they would anymore.
They wouldn't be 8 to 15.
If Meath and Offaly play again, and you're telling me Meath are favourites, I'm backing Offaly with you
in a neutral venue. That's fine. We'll do that. Point and Hartigans.
Look, you can dine that horse if you want, but me being in 18th position is, I think, a proper reflection of where they're at and where they deserve to be, and it's a long way back from there, and I think it could get worse this year.
Are they arse with the Tailteann Cup?
It's not even about being arse, Johnny. It's just a mess at the minute. It's just a mess. Like, if Down lose at the weekend to Armagh and they're in the Tailteann Cup, Down are by far and away runaway favourites for the Tailteann Cup, like 100%. Meath could easily end up in a group with Antrim and Andy McEntee in the Tailteann Cup. And it's just the manner of the fact that Meath are just easy to beat at the minute. And I might get a bit of grief for this, but I genuinely feel sorry for a lot of the players there. And I think the management team maybe are feeling the heat a good bit. Maybe they're a little bit over their heads. Like, maybe they underestimated what was going to be like this year. The luck of the league probably corrected itself. Meath should have been relegated. Like, going off the results and the performances, they should have been relegated to Division 3. They are a Tailteann Cup quality side at the minute. When you looked at the Leinster Championship at the weekend, Louth, and I would say Westmeath, looked like they were playing senior football. I don't think anyone else, like Kildare pulled away from Wicklow with a couple of minutes to go, I don't think anyone else looked like they were playing senior football apart from the Dubs. The Dubs are playing on another level altogether.
Yeah.
Like, the other teams are junior, intermediate, poor intermediate at best. In Leinster, it's a really sad indictment on where football is in the county, and the provincial councils and people in the counties themselves need to have a look themselves, because it's just, look, it won't take a lot for me to get it right, but I'm not sure it's going to happen this summer. Like, you look at down were a laughingstock last year. The right man comes in their defeat in the Tailteann Cup to Cavan last year, down had one Kilcoo player starting, Niall Kane in goals, Bobo Kane.
Wow.
At the weekend against Donegal, when they played with purpose and power, and Donegal actually didn't even play that bad, Down had 6 Kilcoo players starting and another 2 on the bench. It doesn't take, and I'm not saying that Meath have a Kilcoo, and that's probably one of the problems. Meath don't have a Kilcoo. Meath club football is a joke. It really is. It's a mess. The senior championship isn't strong. The intermediate championship is probably the most competitive, but I'm not sure how many of them would win a senior if they went up. And there's so many clubs playing junior football. They've started to do a couple of things right in Meath, but like, I don't know how much you want to talk about Meath here, lads. Like, you talked about them Monday, you talked about them Tuesday. We did it on the football pod on Monday evening. Like, what is there to say? Meath are bad. Meath have been bad for a long time, but this is just really bad.
Yeah, this is the low point, and it's like a storied county who has absolutely.
Sorry, let me rephrase that. Meath were bad for a long time, but I will stand by the fact that Andy McEntee got them to a good place in 2019-2020. They played more teams in Division 1 from August 2019 to the end of the league in 2020 than they had done in the entirety of the 2010s. More Division 1 teams. There was 10 games against Division 1 opposition.
Danny Mac 1 on the live comment says, Meath at 18, is this worth doing anymore, or should Rooney be replaced?
What's wrong with him? What does Danny Mac want?
He wants him to be down about 20th or 24th. Like, this is
well, it's a long summer. There's still.
Can I just make one point on this, right? I look forward to the draw being made, and I hope they get drawn in a group against Wicklow, and I would give Wicklow a 50-50 shot at beating Meath at the moment.
Jared, there isn't many teams that I would back this Meath team to beat at the minute. And do you know why? Confidence is utterly shot. There is 100% quality in that team. But at the minute, they're not set up to be hard to beat. They just aren't.
Okay.
And there's not a belief there. And they went out against Offaly and they kicked 2 points. They were 8-15 favourites against Offaly and they kicked 2 points. Meath is not a nice... If you're a Meath footballer at the minute, it's not a nice thing. There is a savage pressure outside and inside.
When you say they kicked 2 points, sorry...
You mean
in the first half?
Oh, in the first half.
Right. At all.
They kicked 2 points...
In the first half.
In the first half.
Yeah.
Right. Let's move on to the next page, and we'll try and rescue the...
Look, the power rankings have a couple of anomalies. Westmeath had an utter collapse at the weekend, and they're in 16th.
They've gone up.
They had to move. I had to move them up.
Why?
There's no other way. Because what am I supposed to do? There's no other way of doing it. I'm not putting Sligo up 9 places or down up 9 places. Their power rankings would eventually correct themselves. There's very few changes from 14 down. And there has been very few changes over the last couple of weeks because I've been right. Like, it's just a mess beneath that.
Where are Cork? Are Cork that much better than Meath at the moment?
Well,
Cork and Meath would be a 0-0 draw.
No, Cork are better than Meath at the minute, but Cork are a mess themselves. They have to have a look at themselves. They're too easy to beat too. But anyways, Westmeath are 16th. They're going to have a decent time in the All-Ireland Robin Series, but they'll be kicking themselves because they have not capitalised on winning last year.
They haven't at all.
Poorly. They were in a great position at the weekend in Navan. They should have been hammering Louth out the gate. Louth are a counter-attacking side who it does not suit them to come from behind, and they did. It was an unbelievable win for Louth. So, and to be expected given how they played this year. And Louth looked awesome. Down or up 4 places, the highest mover, I think the joint highest mover this year, to 15th. I am going to say I called it. I'm sure you both listened to the football pod. Mid-January, I told the lads that Down would beat Donegal. Before all that mess happened in Donegal, they laughed at me.
A bit of a golden cleric going on here, yeah.
Can I?
Down have,
I think Donegal have sunk like a stone, though, and I find it very difficult to see them winning any games. Depending on
like a stone, they have, but they actually performed quite well, Jared, at the weekend. They actually, given the state, they're in a similar position to Meath at the minute, in the sense that utter disarray, and they actually performed quite well.
I think they have a much better management team than Meath do at the moment. I would say that. I think Egan O'Rourke's an excellent manager, but
anyway, is that the general synopsis then with Meath, that like Colin O'Rourke is over his head?
I think that he has not so far shown the ability to analyse where the game is and build a team capable of playing in the modern game. That's the evidence of the league campaign and now the championship campaign. And it's much more difficult being a manager than it is being a pundit.
Davy Burke has a 20 strong backroom team. I'm not au fait with every single member of Meath's backroom team, but when O'Rourke was appointed, that's actually small, right? That's small. Do you know what I mean? Like there's across the board with everything that's there. But he's got Mark McHugh around him and Jerry McGowan as a football coach, and McGowan has a lot of experience in county football from Sligo, Clare, and now Roscommon. McHugh is very highly regarded in terms of what he's doing, and obviously he's got the background in Donegal. O'Rourke, when he was appointed, spoke about who he was going to get. I don't know for sure, but I'm not convinced he got everyone he wanted to get. I think he got some of the people he wanted to get. Bray and Callaghan are two of Meath's most highly regarded coaches in the county at the minute. Garrigan and Ivers come across in the ladies setup. They're important to have. But when I look at the Meath setup from afar, and I look at what Mayo have done, what Galway have done, what Kildare have done, in a sense, there's just more of a brains trust. And you look at Porrick Joyce, Porrick Joyce is somebody who's won everything, he's done everything, and he's able to lean on people like Keane O'Neill and John Dively and everything. The manner in which Galway, Porrick Joyce left us waiting for 50 minutes outside the Galway dressing room in the Hyde the last day, because he wanted to wait until he had a shower, he'd talked to the lads, he'd cooled down, and then he was going to talk. Everything about them are a professional operation. By the way, Shane Walsh stayed on the pitch 45 minutes after the game.
Autographs.
Right.
Signing autographs, and then he was into the dressing room, and I don't know how they squeezed their 40-man strong panel into that dressing room in the Hyde, because it's not a big dressing room, but by God they did. So we'll talk about Galway in a minute, but that is sort of what we're seeing now. And Down's backroom team, Laverty, Marty Clark, they're doing so well, and they just know what they're doing, and they're playing an under-20 final Wednesday, and then they're going into the Armagh game at the weekend. That is going to be a cracker. I don't know if Down will beat them this year. I'm not sure they have enough up top, but it's going to be a cracker. Kildare 14th, they're not moving. Nobody else is moving from 14th to 9th. Kildare, Cork, Louth, Clare, Donegal and Monaghan. I think Louth and Clare are the 12th and 11th best team in the country, and they have proven that so far.
Yeah, Clare Donegal will be an interesting game if they get drawn.
Definitely.
Depends on where it was. You'd give Clare a good shout in. Where do we know where the Clare Kerry game is going to be?
Park Urin, is it?
No, it's not going to be Park Urin. It's a TBC, and I made the case last night that this game should be played in Cusack Park in Ennis.
They wanted that, didn't they? Yeah.
Well, Clare wanted, but it would also be a good thing for Kerry looking on from the outside. It's no good for Kerry and
tell from the Examiner what I couldn't tell what Kerry wanted yesterday.
It's more than likely going to be the Gaelic ground. I tell you what, Jack O'Connor is going to want to win that game no matter what. So he doesn't care where it's played. I'm not sure Kerry
probably went 1,500 to the Gaelic grounds, will they?
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm not sure it's going to make a huge amount of difference either way. Like Clare and Cusack Park would definitely be more competitive. They'd be competitive anyway. But, Kerry going into that cauldron might put them under a bit more pressure. It was a cakewalk for them at the weekend. They didn't even have to switch it on at all. So, yeah, we'll see what happens.
Okay, let's keep going.
Okay, Armagh 8th, Roscommon 7th. Tyrone 6th, Derry 5th. I thought about making a couple of changes here, but I don't think it matters that much. They are where they're at. Mayo have slid back to 4th. I think they are still 4th, even though they're 3rd seed. I'm just looking at it in terms of what they can bring to the table and where I think they're going to come from coming into this. Derry, if they beat Monaghan, if they win the Ulster final, will be a 1st seed, and they'll be facing one of Mayo, Tyrone, I can't even remember the seeds anymore. I'm confusing myself. I just think that's what they're at the minute. Sligo will be 2nd.
It's interesting you have Galway ahead of Dublin, which I was just saying earlier. I don't get the betting has Dublin way shorter than Galway to win the All-Ireland, which I don't really see.
Well, the bookies don't always get it right, Johnny. And just from the evidence that I'm looking at, an argument can be made for these 1, 2, 3 anyway. I haven't seen anything to change my mind on this. I actually think Galway are the most improved side of any team I've seen. Last year they were, and this year they are again.
I spoke to Tommy at half time. It was like, this game is over. And you were like, no, it's not over yet. And then Roscommon were a point ahead 8 minutes later. But Galway, what I loved was, I know it was a fortuitous goal, but Galway just very, very nonchalantly just exerted control again.
Galway had the tools to wrestle back momentum. We've seen teams crumble. We saw Tyrone crumble, even though they played well against Monaghan, crumbled when the momentum switched. Clare managed to wrestle back momentum on Limerick. Westmeath failed to do it against Louth. Galway have such intelligence across that team. And what they've added, they haven't just brought in kids, right? They've brought in a couple of rookies. Johnny McGrath is getting a good chance this year. Colin Sweeney is asserting himself as a young fella. But they brought back an all-star in Ian Burke. And you want to hear James O'Donoghue talking about Ian Burke on the Football Pod this week. He's just a freak of a footballer. James Horan wrote this week, he's nearly the only footballer in the country that you don't want to see kick the ball. Yeah. He's so good, and he just knits that team together so well. And it gives Galway so many options. Like, they can Finnerty's a shooter. I think, and he's a finisher. They can start Finnerty, they can bring him in, they can put Walsh to 11. They've got Peter Cook now, John Maher. Sorry, Jer.
And McDade's come back.
Isn't this the debate that we had last year about them, that actually they didn't have strength and depth? They thought they did, but they didn't. And what they've done over this winter, because the previous winter a lot of players had left and they were like, oh, they're clearing house, they're setting new standards, blah blah blah, and then ultimately that proved to be a season too early and it wasn't the right thing to do. And since the start of last year, like, they've changed their backroom team, they've added experience and strength and depth, and Finnerty might not have been ready to be the main scoring forward if Comer was being marked out of it and Shane Walsh being marked out of it, but he's certainly a brilliant sub to have to come on for 25-30 minutes if you need it. And
I made the point this week.
I see the case. The one thing I would say is that I thought that Comer still has another gear to get to. If he dinks the finish in the first half as opposed to just
a poor finish, he even put it over the bar, like,
he got it over the bar.
He did eventually, but it was a poor finish. Yeah,
he needed to go on his right there. I don't know if a dink works over Conor Carroll, but I would say about Galway's depth, like, yes, Dublin have depth, and we know that. Okay, yes, Kerry have probably the best footballer in the country, and they have depth around them, and probably maybe the third best footballer in the country as well, maybe the fourth in Sean O'Shea. But what Galway have are the options to adapt and change as the year goes on. They've got decisions to make, and they're not bad decisions. They have a keeper who can go short, a keeper who can go long. Maybe that's a position they need to figure out a little bit more. They've got options in defence for man markers. They can free up Sean Kelly. If Sean Mulcairns gets back from injury and he gets a couple of games in, he's a fullback who can start in championship football and do a job in anywhere in the country. Coming back from injury, that'll free up Sean Kelly to do whatever they want him to do out the field, or man mark somebody else, or attack, or be a different format and attack. They've got options in the middle third with Maher, McDade, Conroy, Cook. They've got options up top. The difference between Burke and Finnerty, right? Finnerty is a finisher. He's not a receiver. If Finnerty starts, Comer and Walsh's games are different. If Burke starts, it completely changes how Comer and Walsh can play in that game.
Yeah, I agree. I have slight concern about Conroy's general athleticism for later on the championship, but just briefly, because the Examiner piece is brilliant from James Horn, I thought, notwithstanding the fact he made Galway favourites, they appeared clueless on their own kickouts. I thought that was interesting.
So I would say Galway have a lot to work on both kickouts. Joyce was losing the head. I asked him about it after the game. He was losing the head 20 minutes into the game.
After he had a shower.
Yeah, after he had a shower. It looked like, for anyone watching on to the pitch, that Galway had everything going pretty well, but they were completely malfunctioning on the Roscommon kick out. Conor Carroll got every single kick out away. He didn't even get them away to the right or the left. He was getting them down to centre and finding Roscommon people. Galway went along with Bernie Power's kickouts. It was obviously a decision they made. I think they backed themselves to beat Roscommon in the air, but Roscommon proved, like against Mayo, that they're very, very good on the break and in the air. So Roscommon definitely dominated the kickouts, but Galway were just so much better when they had control of the game in attack and defence. Yeah, they have things to work on. They have things to work on 100%.
Which is what you want.
But Dublin, Galway and Kerry have games now where they can work on the odd thing or make a couple of changes. And, like, Ger, I don't know how excited you were about the Dubs. Are you very excited about the Dubs? For me, they've done this every bloody year for the last 12 years. It's Laois, they're Division 4, it's Leinster. They're putting the chest out. I need to see it in an All-Ireland round-robin group.
Defensively is going to be interesting.
I'll tell you what I care about. I care about the strength and depth, and I care about the fact that they've added 3 potential footballers of the year since last year's All-Ireland final. Like, you know, Con coming back fully fit, that's a revolution for them. A lot of players who you assumed were guaranteed nailed on starters, like Kieran Kilkenny got dropped, I think, for the league final, to be honest, but he came in at the weekend, and now have a different player at 11, which means that they're not going to be using Kilkenny for transitions alone. His job might just be to be in the inside line causing trouble. I think if you're adding Jack McCaffrey back into that team, and if he's fit enough to be starting and getting game time now, by the time the All-Ireland quarter-final comes around, Jack McCaffrey's going to be Jack McCaffrey again, and then you've got Paul Mannion. Like,
Dublin are in an unbelievable place.
Yeah,
I totally agree with you.
Yeah,
would you have them first?
I'd have them. Yeah. I'd have joined first. Them and Kerry. And
come on. Yeah, would you have Dublin first?
I'd have Dublin first. Yeah, I'd have Dublin first at the moment. Yeah. And then I'd have Kerry second, and then I'd still have a gap to Galway. Galway have to show it to me in Croke Park against a good team.
What are you talking about? We were amazing against Kerry last year. Amazing. Like, you have a dodgy free, and we could have like gotten a
game. You're never going to win that game.
Has Johnny gone full circle in this?
No, I'm very confident Galway have a massive chance this year. And Ger, it's all about, like, history is written by the winners. Galway were amazing in that game last year. It was
they were
a
great
team.
Performance. They were a one-man team.
Yeah, and sorry, Damien Comer didn't really play well at all.
Why not?
So we don't know that. So maybe the two of them will finally play well together at Croke Park.
The management team couldn't work away to get their best forward in the game.
And massive belief, a fella who will leave the media waiting. The man that is Porrick Joyce.
He learned that from James Horner, by the way. My last point on this: the power rankings isn't a predictions model; it's how it's seen at the minute.
I think it's good.
Power ranking will correct themselves eventually, says Dennis Ryan. Ergo, I'm wrong about these, but we'll get them right yet. Yeah, don't worry about it, Tommy. The football pod live and in glorious Technicolor in Killarney. The last few tickets are available. I don't know if they are. It might be sold out. Is it?
It could be sold out. It was very close to being sold out last night. We got Mark O'Shea as our special guest. What a roll of honour. 5 All-Ireland titles, 3 All-Stars, 10 Munsters. I'm not sure they matter. 3 league titles. Footballer of the Year 2007. James O'Donoghue, when he broke in, had to mark Mark O'Shea in training. Paddy Andrews come up against him plenty of times. We're going to have loads of great stories in the Great Southern Hotel Thursday, May the 4th. We also have a special interview coming out this week on the Football Pod feed. Episode 15 is out right now. David Clifford joins Paddy Andrews and James O'Donoghue for a chat. We got 25 minutes with Cliffy, as James calls him throughout. I think Paddy even threw in a Davy at one stage. So it's quite a familial chat. But Clifford gives us some really good stuff, and it's a really interesting chat. It's kind of a bit more about how he broke through and how he approaches big games. So that's going to be in the Football Pod feed later in the week.
All thriller, no filler, Tommy. Good stuff.
Tommy knows his football, obviously. Listen to Football Pod the odd time.
And I was looking at the power rankings, and I thought that Jesus Owen must still be feeling the effects of these mushrooms.
Never ever going to forget about that. The football show with Damien Delaney in your podcast feed now on the OTB Podcast Network. Also there, Porrick O'Hora chatting with Aisling O'Reilly, and Monday Night Rugby with Fiona Hayes and Jerry Thornley.
Very briefly though, like nobody's talking about Mayo. Like Mayo are just going to creep in there in the background. I think they're like 6 or 7 favourites or something. Like beat Galway relatively comfortably in the league final.
It turned out the league final didn't matter.
Yeah, I don't think. I think it's kind of rewriting history that Galway didn't care that much. I think they started the game badly and were beaten by a better team.
All right.
Yeah.
After the ads, we have Phil Egan and Kathleen McNamee in studio talking Spurs and Arsenal. It's a North London special.
I think that everybody's got a limit. Everybody's got like a limit of what they can take. And those players you just mentioned there have been at Tottenham a long time. And they've probably rallied the troops several times. You know, there's a clear issue off the pitch. You can say Conte was at home with a cigar saying, I told you so. But he could have told you so before he went in there, because he's not the first manager to go in there and try and change the culture at Tottenham. There doesn't seem to be any desire. Now, in any business, you know, the culture ultimately comes from the top. If the owner is running his business in a certain type of way, and I know they have that big stadium now and they have to pay it down. Remember when Arsenal first moved into the Emirates, transfer funds were kind of taken down a little bit. They didn't spend as much and they suffered on the pitch. I think Tottenham are kind of going down that road as well for the next few years. All those players you've mentioned, Lloris, Kane, Son, Dyer, they've just been on the road a long time and they've had to deal with this type of situation before. Okay. A manager coming in, looking for, you know, a change, doesn't come, the ownership doesn't demand it, the ownership doesn't give him the money that he's looking for to make the changes. And culture is driven by firstly the owners, but culture on the pitch is driven by the players and the players' personalities and what the players are capable of giving you. And unfortunately, Tottenham just haven't got enough of the right types in their squad.
You've got to give a lot of credit to Watford for the way they made it a contest. And 1-8.
You're listening
to OTB AM. Off the Ball Daily. A home for your favourite podcasts from Off the Ball. The performance rankings, You Had to Be There, the crappy quiz, and a slight tangent.
Ireland against Scotland in World Cup B.
In Chile. The World Plate.
World Cup B is growing on me. As a name.
Subscribe to the Off the Ball Daily podcast feed right now. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
It's our North London special. Kathleen and Phil are here. Before we get into that though, Phil, the cricket team, somebody was mentioning earlier on that they need to mention, 466 for 6 at the moment in the second test against Sri Lanka. And Camper has gone on to 103. We had Sterling on 103, but Verney was out for 95. Sterling was out for 103. So this is not bad.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah, well, you consider how badly Ireland were beaten in the first test against Sri Lanka, and then good opening day yesterday. And Paul Sterling actually had to retire yesterday, injured. Such is the heat there, but he resumed this morning on 74, got to 103. So he has centuries in all formats now of international cricket. It was his first test century, and as I said in the last few minutes, Curtis Camphor's just gone to 103. So yeah, it's going well, and we're on day 2. So like, even just, you were thinking about an hour and a half ago, if they got to 450, that would be a really good start. And now you're starting to think, can we get to the 500?
So this is our first innings. We're just going to keep going here. It's day 2. We're not declaring or anything.
Sri Lanka declared nearly on 600 the last time in the first test. Yeah, okay. And obviously, they didn't even have to bat for their second innings because they beat us so comfortably. So that's what makes it even more remarkable that we've bounced back.
Right, that's a very good sign.
It's great. I always enjoy coming in early in the morning. There's live sport on your TV, and especially when an Ireland cricket team is doing well.
In glorious Technicolor sunshine as well. Right, let's move to Spurs and Arsenal. Kathleen, before we get to Arsenal and whether or not they're going to win the league, the Arsenal team coming back from the 2-2 draw against Wolfsburg had a minor incident with the plane.
Just a minor one. They were on the tarmac and they were just getting ready to take off, and the plane went on fire. And actually I saw photos of it, and actually the wing was properly on fire because a bird flew into it.
Right.
So as our very own Emma Carroll said, someone clearly doesn't want Arsenal to do well. It kind of topped off what was probably the most traumatic week of my life, watching Arsenal, from drawing 2-2 with West Ham, losing Kim Little, then losing against United in the WSL, then losing Leah Williamson, then drawing with Southampton, and then drawing 2-2 at Wolfsburg. I didn't know whether I was going up or down for most of the week. And then this plane incident, I was like, that's just it. I'm retiring now from football. I'm done.
That's the first leg of the Champions League semi-final.
Yeah, so that was first leg. Obviously, no one actually really expected them to go out and I think perform in the way that they did. They went 2-0 down and it seemed like, that was it. Katie McCabe was absolutely sensational. She took the captain's armband for it. There's actually a great piece in Arseblog today analysing all the different positions she played in. She played quite centrally for a lot of the game because Arsenal midfield was a real issue for them, and she would come in from the wings quite a lot to support there. But yeah, so the return leg is on Monday in the Emirates, 5:45, and they've already sold 45,000 tickets. So It's going to be an incredible night.
So Katie McCabe has gone from being potentially leaving the club to now captaining the team in Champions League.
Yeah, well, in the space of last week, Arsenal lost their captain and vice captain, and she's the next person really in the squad that you would expect to step up into that position. So, I mean, Kim Little's out at least until the start of next season, and Leah Williamson's done her ACL, so it looks like Katie's going to have the captain's armband at Arsenal and Ireland for a while to come.
Right, no harm from an Ireland perspective.
Any ramifications for her Irish kind of role with the way she's playing for Arsenal at the moment, in terms of going in centrally in the last...
I don't think so, because I think she is required to do a very different thing for Arsenal in what she's required for Ireland. Actually, she's probably, in the sense that because there's been so many injuries in the squad, 5 of the top best Arsenal players are all out at the moment with serious long-term injuries. She definitely has had to swap around her roles a lot more, which is probably closer to what she's had to do with Arsenal in terms of supporting players in positions that she doesn't normally have to do at Arsenal because they have the quality of players there. But I think the main worry would be that she is now integral to that Arsenal team. There's 4 games left in the WSL plus the Champions League, and as we all know, Katie isn't afraid of a tackle. So for me, it would be more just the amount of games, the amount of minutes she's going to have to play over the next couple of weeks, and the fact that Arsenal players have a tendency to get injured. I mean, she was flying into tackles in that Wolfsburg game at the weekend.
Yeah, that's a euphemism, right?
I wish it was.
She should have been sent off, though, right?
Yeah, she should have been. So Lena Oberdorf, one of like the great German players, she was young player at the Euros last year, tackled one of the Arsenal players, and Katie just went straight for her. It was a mix between a shove, a chest shove, a hand shove, and then also she looked like if she had got a little bit closer to her, she would have headbutted her as well. Referee only showed her a yellow card. I thought it probably should have been a red, but Oberdorf did shake her hand afterwards. She'd be the sort of player herself who wouldn't be too shy of throwing in a tackle.
Game recognised game.
It's proper sport. It's warriors.
Leadership, though. She saw one of her teammates getting done, and she said, "Right, I'm gonna." And also because you have the captain's armband, you only get a booking.
Yeah.
She didn't have it, maybe she could have got a red.
But the only thing with that is that, like, say, so she was missing for the United game because she'd got 5 yellow cards, and like one of those yellow cards was just for time wasting. So like it's one thing showing the leadership, but like they needed her in that game and she wasn't able to play. So I'm all for it, but I'm like, choose your moments. If she gets sent off and misses like the next game or misses the Champions League final, that's do or die for Arsenal. But yeah, be interesting. There's a new episode of Koi Gig out this morning. It should be in all your podcast feeds, and Emma Byrne was talking a bit about Arsenal's chances, because obviously Emma Byrne has won a Champions League, so she knows what she's talking about, and she was saying that she thinks Arsenal might be able to do it this year. So.
All right, well, so next Monday, Bank Holiday Monday, it's 5:45. Is that what you said? Kickoff?
Yeah, it's on Days and on YouTube, so it's free to watch as well. So literally, as long as you have YouTube, you'll be able to watch it.
Okay, let's talk Spurs. Ryan Mason replaces Christian Stellini as interim Spurs boss. Is this one of the worst bad decisions that anybody's ever made ever? Like,
we've had Lampard.
Well, don't forget, Ryan Mason was brought in before the League Cup final against Manchester City when Jose Mourinho was let go, and I know things hadn't gone well for Mourinho and Spurs were just sick of him, but I remember thinking at the time, you just hold on to him for this game. Was there the worry that they'd actually beat City and then they'd have to hold on to him?
Do you think there was a massive bonus for winning a trophy in the contract? I suspect there was a massive bonus.
Well, I just remember thinking back to that League Cup final, you have a better chance of beating City with Mourinho than you do with Ryan Mason.
Absolutely.
Like, this just goes...
Makes no sense.
What they're doing at Spurs in terms of the leadership or lack of, it's been an absolute mess. Since Pochettino, obviously the highs they had under Pochettino of a team that was challenging for the league title and playing really good football, then they didn't give him the backing. Then he leaves, and then they start bringing in short-term fixes. Managers that you wouldn't associate with Spurs, because what you look at what Arsenal are doing, they hired a young coach, gave him time, and look what's happened. Whereas that's kind of what you'd think Spurs would do. But as soon as they went down the Mourinho route, and then they brought in Nuno Espirito Santo, who, if anyone had watched Wolves, and also this guy played for Mourinho, and he's not as good as Mourinho. So they replaced Mourinho with a guy that's not as good as him. And then they brought in Conte, who we know
doesn't stay very
again
long.
is short term. But even when he won the league with Chelsea, the first day of the next season he turned up in a tracksuit because he was that pissed off that he didn't get backed in the summer. And then, he goes and wins the FA Cup that season, but he's gone. So there's no good decisions being made at the moment, and you're just thinking that they have to get the next decision right. But
Spurs won't perform well until they get rid of Daniel Levy. I fully believe that, and I believe it for both the men's and the women's team, because the women's is as chaotic as the men's, and it's a club issue. It's like the people that Levy brings in and the people that are making the decisions around him and the coaches he wants to bring in are just all wrong for the club.
Can I just play devil's advocate in this for a minute, right? Like, in terms of a club that is well run, is on an even financial key,
great stadium,
does not require an injection of cash from a despotic, nation state, and has still managed to reach a Champions League final, compete for a league, they've taken a situation and they've turned the club into something really valuable that is self-financing. And as owners go, sure, they've made some bad decisions, but show me the paradigm of good ownership in the Premier League at the moment. That would be my counter argument to
but does it depend as well, like what you're expecting off the pitch or what you're expecting off the club. So like, I think if you ask most Spurs supporters, would you mind if the club was in a bit of debt? Like, I'm not talking like Glazers sort of debt where they're like tanking the club and like the ability of the club as a result. But if you ask most Spurs supporters, would you prefer that stability or would you prefer stability on the pitch? What do you think the answer is going to be?
I think the Glazers have managed to bankroll one of the most expensive wage bills in world football over the last decade and a half, and while they've been an easy target for Manchester United fans, ultimately the club is going to get sold to somebody who's going to come in and leave it debt free. So I suspect that the Spurs fans would actually prefer that style of ownership, because the Glazers have if they'd got the manager right, instead of picking bad managers over the last number of years, they would have been more successful.
Spurs should be a very attractive place to go as well for players. It's London, it's a great stadium, it's a big club if they get the right man in charge.
I remember talking to an Inter Milan fan when Conte got the job, and he was like, Spurs are going to win the league. Conte wins the league everywhere he goes. So like, on the face of it, he was the best available candidate in world football, and for whatever reason they fell out, and they fell out pretty quickly.
Yeah, and don't forget, they finished last season really strongly, where they pipped Arsenal and they beat Arsenal. I remember they took a point off Liverpool. They put a bit of a dent in Liverpool's title hopes, and they were just so hard to beat, and you could see, right, this is exactly what Conte was brought here to do.
And Kulusevski looked like a good signing.
Yeah, and they signed a few players in the summer, and you thought, right, they're going to build on this. And even you think back to the game at Stamford Bridge earlier in the season with him and Tuchel going head to head, and Spurs got a draw in that game where Chelsea were the better team that day, but Spurs dug in, and you were like, right, this is Spurs now under Conte. But soon as he talked like a manager who wanted to be sacked, and eventually that's what happened, and it just seemed like a bizarre decision to keep Delaney there, who was part of it.
Yeah, that didn't make any sense. And then sacking him a month later, like, it was clear he wasn't going to be able to pilot the team to Champions League football, and they needed to act and find somebody, and they haven't done that. So do we know, is it Nagelsmann's going to get this gig?
Well, it seems to be the two names are Nagelsmann or Arne Slot, the Feyenoord manager, who he was talked about being a potential Leeds manager earlier in the season, but he's top of the league at Feyenoord. He's going to win the league with Feyenoord,
which is
only their second title in 20 years. And not only that, he obviously got to the final of the Conference League last season. They lost to Roma. They've just been beaten by Roma in the quarterfinals of the Europa League. They were a couple of minutes away from going through until Dybala scored, and then it went to extra time, and Roma have gone through. But they play a really good brand of football, exciting brand, and he's somebody that would, and I think Nagelsmann as well. I know, like, Bayern Munich are looking pretty foolish now for getting rid of him, because Thomas Tuchel's had a bit of a shocker apart from the opening game when they beat Dortmund. But Nagelsmann, I think, would be more suited to Tottenham than he would have been to Chelsea.
Okay.
I think.
So either of those two are good?
Yeah, absolutely.
Luis Enrique's name's disappeared off the register for all of these available jobs. The Chelsea job's going to Pochettino, according to the papers today.
Yeah, and you just wonder now, like, could Spurs do something where they thought, right, there's a lot of talk of Pochettino going to Chelsea. Maybe we get rid of Stellini and we say to Maurizio Pochettino, come on back.
It doesn't look like they're in talks.
No.
It looks like that's not on the...
him and Daniel Levy are still very good friends, though.
Right. Like an ex,
Well, there was a lot of criticism, wasn't there, way like Spurs previously, when they initially got rid of Conte, how they conducted like talking to people like Luis Enrique. So maybe they've actually started doing the right thing and doing it on the damn low.
Not telling everybody about it.
Yeah.
Oh, look, we're having loads of chats with everybody. Here's our list. Like, am I on the list? Am I not on the list? Not necessarily the best way to do it. So the list of stuff that's happened to Spurs since the World Cup. Sheffield United beat them in with their second string team.
Yeah.
Conte had that rant that was 8.5 minutes long
after the Southampton game when they conceded.
And Fabio Paratici, the Paratici thing is like, oh, you're going to be the brains of the operation, and then he gets banned. But they knew about his ban. This is mad.
Yeah,
it is. So look, that's the counter to the club has been well run over a long period of time. They've made a lot of catastrophic decisions recently, and you'd have to wonder, would Slot fix everything in one? Is that like
whoever it is not going to fix it in one go? But that's like, it's very hard to do that now. I mean, even as good a job, I think, as Ten Hag has done this season. There's obviously been results where you think, "Whoa, that's not good," but then you have to take a step back and realise, like, it's the first season. So one thing, if they were to get Arne Slot, he demands that his teams are very fit,
right?
And they can play some really exhilarating, fast attacking football, especially watching them in the Conference League last season. They would have had Sinistera, who plays for Leeds now. Malacia was there. Senesi, who plays for Bournemouth. Reece Nelson was on loan there. Sometimes they could score that classic goal where they're defending a set piece and then 10 seconds later they've the ball in the back of the net because they break with such pace. So, but he did a good job at Alkmaar, got the job at Feyenoord, finished third last season, and he's going to win the league. So that would suggest that he's a very good manager.
Okay, last one for now. Arsenal's fixture list is away at Man City, Chelsea at home, away at Newcastle, Brighton at home, away at Forest, and then Wolves at home. That's a pig of a fixture list, really, Kathleen, at this stage. So
yeah, no, it
isn't. You've Chelsea are very, very beatable.
Brighton
and Newcastle would kind of be the two that would stick out. Well, obviously City as well.
Forest
tomorrow.
Still fighting the second last game of the season. Won't be relegated by that stage.
I think you have to look at the way they've performed over the last couple of weeks, and unless Arteta is able to pull something out of this team, I was looking back on how every player has played, and especially the last 3 games, and it just seems like mentally, I don't know if they're there. There was one of Zinchenko crying after Trent Alexander-Arnold got the better of him during the Liverpool game, and I was like, that doesn't strike me as a team that are mentally in the right headspace. The Southampton game, you can argue that they did fight their way back into it, but they shouldn't have fought their way back into it. I think that was actually the worst match of the season that I had watching Arsenal. It looked like Saka was the main player that was kind of pulling the squad through that, and you don't want your youngest player to be the one that's stepping up. You want your Gabriel Jesus not to be throwing himself around the box and to be actually taking his shots. So yeah, I think looking at that fixture list, unless Arteta has something magic up his sleeve, the title may be gone.
Yeah, William Saliba, it's all fallen apart since he's gone. And Rob Holding, the thoughts of him playing against City tomorrow. Now, Kathleen mentioned Saka. If Saka couldn't get at City, then they have a chance. I wonder, with the results the last few games, will it actually maybe work in Arsenal's favour, where they think, right, we actually have to have a go here? But yeah, I still just think Rob Holding, I don't know, is there a case that you start Ben White as a centre half, but you've no right back then? You could be playing someone like Reece Nelson as a right back.
They've had an amazing season, regardless of what happens.
Absolutely, yeah.
Their points tally is really, really, really good.
They have to win this game if they're going to win the league, though.
They do.
I think even if they win tomorrow, they still won't win the league.
Yeah, that's actually true also. Yeah.
Okay.
Breaking my heart here, guys.
But at least it's in their own hands.
Well, it's just that I think the fixture list is tricky for them.
Yeah, but I still think this has been a massive success of a season, in the sense that no one put Arsenal in this position. They're only ones to have put it up against City, and I know they have blown it, and I totally accept that. But I have gone past the point of caring at this stage. I'm just happy that finally we have an Arsenal team that is competing in the way they're competing, because
it's good to feel alive. Yeah, exactly. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. On tomorrow's show, Shawnee Johnson talking Cavan and the overall weekend preview. We've got Adam Pope on Leeds' massive game with Leicester tonight. Wrexham midfielder and Limerick native Anthony Ford about what it's like to play in Hollywood, and plenty more besides. Right now we're going to leave you with the rest of Damien Delaney from the football show last night. Have a terrific Tuesday.
Damien Delaney is with us, long time no speak. He has broken off from his wedge practice and pudding practice to join us in a minute. I'm sorry to interrupt your usual Monday regimen, but we appreciate it.
Welcome back is right. It's been a while, Joe. I thought you lost my phone number there. Even send you out messages for games of golf and nothing.
Blanks. Sorry.
So it's no, I understand, man. It's all good. What a weekend. Where do we start?
We start with Newcastle 6, Spurs 1, I think. Spurs' worst defeat in 10 years since 2013. Have you ever been 3-0 down after 9 minutes?
No, never after 9. Probably conceded 3 in 9 minutes, but not at the start of the game. That's just a football club that was trying to get to the end of the season and make a decision, and unfortunately the players have just thrown a towel in. Obviously, the new manager, or the the guy that's in charge in inverted commas has not had the desired effect. Players are just not responding to him. And that is a capitulation that I don't think you're ever going to see again, like 5-0 down in that space of time. Wow.
Kenny, we heard his commentary there, and he was referring to the ferocious physicality of Newcastle, and they do have something really good going at the moment, and the stadium is very much aligned to that. And it was always going to be a tough game. So to an extent, it's understandable that any side could have a bad day at St James's. But I'm with you. But Spurs are actually a disgrace, aren't they?
Yeah, it's just a team that's thrown the towel in. The new manager has come in. He's obviously very, very weak. There's no accountability. There's no drive. The players are obviously running the show, doing what they want. I could imagine that changing room just being very, very somber every day coming in, no motivation. Timekeeping is probably poor. Players not showing up for gym sessions. Just an absolute capitulation. And the new guy has... we always talk about it, there's this new guy come in and the players genuinely know he's not going to be there for the long term. We spoke about it before with Chelsea. Will the players throw the towel in? Not to that extent, but this guy obviously carries no weight in the changing room. Probably just been really nice to the players, told them everything they wanted to hear. Don't worry about it. I'm going to get you in a good place mentally. And that's what you get when that happens. That is an absolute capitulation of biblical proportions.
Yeah. Christian Stellini is who you're talking about, Conte's right-hand man, who they've inexplicably, I think, just left behind. And in the main, up until yesterday, he had very much stuck with Conte's approach, Conte's formation. So yesterday we saw a change of formation. In effect, he took two wingers who had been playing as wing-backs and made them two orthodox full-backs. And the two boys who, you wouldn't say the sharpest of centre-backs between them. That was a bold enough move away to Newcastle, given the importance of the game. Why do you think Stellini looked at the situation and said, well, now is the time to switch?
Well, because probably he, when you sack a manager, you're looking for change. You're looking for a fresh impetus, a fresh voice, new ideas, something to stimulate the players' minds, for the players to come into training and go, oh, that's new, that's different. Because Conte got sacked, well, probably because of his rant after the Southampton game, was it? But you're looking for a fresh voice, something different, because the players have obviously switched off, and players have probably tried. The manager's obviously tried it, and it has not worked at all. It's an absolute catastrophe for him. He changed formation. Now, I'd be the first one to pick away at formations, and I'd be the first one to say, they got this wrong. There's no formation in the world acceptable for conceding that many goals. That was a complete and utter attitude issue. That has nothing to do with the formations, unless you played two at the back, or unless you play something wild. That is purely 100% down to attitude. The managers obviously made the changes. The players probably didn't get any kind of buzz from it, didn't think that they were going to get any energy out of it, and look what happened. But as I said, that's just purely energy.
There's something very funny about that Spurs dressing room, and there has been for a while now. I don't know where he watched the game, but Antonio Conte was watching with a cigar out and was saying, I told you, I told you there is just something rotten here. And yet I would look at Harry Kane and I would look at Son, and to be fair, Lloris, he's not he's had a dip in the last number of years, but he's France's record appearance holder. He's had a great career. The senior pros in that dressing room, I would look at them and I would think they seem like head screwed on, dedicated types, and yet there must be something missing there for them to allow this culture to flourish and not nip it in the bud.
I think that everybody's got a limit. Everybody's got a limit of what they can take, and those players you just mentioned there have been at Tottenham a long time, and they've probably rallied the troops several times. There's a clear issue off the pitch. You can say Conte was at home with a cigar saying I told you so, but he could have told you so before he went in there, because he's not the first manager to go in there and try and change the culture of Tottenham. There doesn't seem to be any desire. Now, in any business, the culture ultimately comes from the top. If the owner is running his business in a certain type of way, and I know they have that big stadium now and they have to pay it down. Remember when Arsenal first moved into the Emirates, transfer funds were kind of taken down a little bit. They didn't spend as much and they suffered on the pitch. I think Tottenham are kind of going down that road as well for the next few years. All those players just mentioned, Lloris, Kane, Son, Dyer, they've just been on the road a long time, and they've had to deal with this type of situation before. A manager coming in, looking for, a change, doesn't come, the ownership doesn't demand it, the ownership doesn't give him the money that he's looking for to make the changes, and culture is driven by firstly the owners, but culture on the pitch is driven by the players and the players' personalities and what the players are capable of giving you. And unfortunately, Tottenham just haven't got enough of the right types in their squad.
That's an interesting theory. So I can imagine new manager coming in and giving the usual speech to the team and talking about how we're going to start working really hard, we're going to become the fittest team in the league, blah, blah, blah. A glazed look coming over Harry Kane's tired eyes.
Yeah. I've heard this before, that type of thing. And it goes, you're not the first guy to come in here and say that. We've all heard it before. We've all had to go at this. So, look, there just seems to be a big change at Tottenham. I don't know is the sale of the club still being mooted? Is there a possibility? But that just looks like a club that needs to be sold as well, and somebody to come in with some fresh impetus and sign some proper players to change the culture in that squad.
Yeah, currently it's a real pinch point at the moment. They've no manager of their men's team, they have no manager of their women's team, and their director of football, Fabio Paratici, has just resigned because he lost his appeal against a worldwide ban in the aftermath of that Juve false accounting controversy. So he's banned for 30 months. So there's nobody really steering the ship aside from Daniel Levy, who really couldn't be less popular. They did have a good thing going under Pochettino. I mean, it did look like the direction of travel was good there. So he's been gone since November 2019. Mourinho's had a stab. Conte's had a stab. You forget about Nuno having a stab. I don't know who's likely to come in there next and fix things. I've seen Brendan Rodgers, for instance, being linked to the job. Can you imagine any manager who's out there that would actually put a bit of juice back into Harry Kane? I keep talking about Kane. He's into his last year of his contract, by the way, starting next season. That's another issue to be dealt with.
There'll always be a manager, absolutely, and even top managers will take that Spurs job. When you look at the size of the club that it is, the training ground, the stadium, there'll always be a manager, an optimist who thinks, I can be the one that comes in there and does it.
Yeah.
Daniel Levy runs that club with a tight authority. I'd say that managers will go, even Patrici will go to the owner and say, here's a list of players that we want, 1, 2, 3, and then they get, 5, 6, 7. I don't think they ever get the ones that they want, because Spurs are saying, well, we can spend 60 million on this guy, or we could spend 40 on this guy. We don't see much of a difference. We're going to go with 41. Harry Kane scores goals, absolutely brilliant, but I think it's time he moved on as well. But where does he go now? At his age, who's going to take him in? Obviously, there'll always be somebody to take Harry Kane, but has he missed the boat for a top team? Like, would Liverpool take him? I know they have Darwin Núñez. I know City won't take him now because they have Haaland. Does he go abroad? Bayern Munich are crying out for number 9 at the moment. Harry Kane is an interesting one now, because a lot of teams, will be looking at him and thinking, how much do you want? He's in his last year of his contract, big wages. That'll be interesting to see how it plays out over summer.
Yeah, he's 30 in July. Now, 10 years ago, we would have said, yeah, the end is in sight. I would have thought what we're seeing over the last number of years for particularly elite strikers is Kane should have a really good 6 years in him still.
I think so. He's had a lot of injuries. He's played a lot of miles on the clock, played a lot of football.
You're not as sure then?
Well, look, all I'm saying is that, like, if you got him for, in the last year of his contract, Spurs, Daniel Levy is notorious for just grinding players down and letting them go on a free. So one more year of Harry Kane being stuck in that rut. He's 31 then when he comes out of it on a free transfer. Absolutely, someone will take him then. But can he do another year of that Tottenham changing room? Can he do another year of that? I don't think so. If Spurs do decide to sell him, Daniel Levy is still going to want top money for him. There's no way that Daniel Levy is going to do Harry Kane any favours, irrespective of what he's done for the football club. There's no way that he's going to say to him, look, Harry, you've been a great servant. We're sorry we failed you. But, you can go for 20 million quid and, you got a host of suitors to take you. I don't think that's happening. I think that he's still going to look for like 60, 70 million quid from even in his last year.
Yeah.
And hope that someone like a Bayern Munich or a Manchester United will pay it. So that's how we see that playing out.
Okay. Do us a favour there. Your collar is hitting off your microphone on your lead, so just zip it down. There we go. Get the Under Armour gear out as well. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Straight from the range there.
I have no doubt. I
was rushing home to beat the traffic to make this.
Yeah, that's Damien Delaney's commute, by the way, on a Monday, everyone, to beat the traffic coming from the driving range. So, and just one last one.
Yeah.
Did you get a feeling around Spurs, even when you were a player, that there was some soft underbelly that was somehow inseparable from their DNA? I never know how much to read into a team being Spursy.
No, not the teams that I played against at White Hart Lane those last few years, with the likes of Dembele in the middle of the park, and what was the Kenyan player's name? Came from Southampton. Oh my God, his name's just popped out of his head. Wanyama, there you go. It used to be Dembele and Wanyama in the middle of the field, and then you always had like Harry Kane at the top end of the pitch, Eriksen floating around, Dele Alli was in his pomp, Kyle Walker, Danny Rose, Vertonghen, and Alderweireld. I mean, these are players that were in their pomp, and there was never a sense that you would get anything free from those guys. Perhaps previously, I know you always hear a lot of ex-players talk about Spurs being Spursy, but not that 3 or 4 year window where he really had it. But the problem was they needed to evolve the squad, and they needed to give Pochettino the backs. And unfortunately, what you're seeing now is the fact that they didn't stay on top of it. Hence the reason Pochettino's gone. They've kind of chose the cheaper option or just tried to half-ass it, and that's where you find themselves now. And now you've what did you say? 2019 he left. That's 2, 3, 4 years of just doing a half measure, and that's what you're left with now with Tottenham, and no manager. Harry Kane's pushing on in age. Lloris is pushing on, probably not the player that he was. Son doesn't look the player that he was. Dyer clearly has fallen off the side of a cliff. You know, it's not the first time that he played poorly. So look, in terms of manager that come in there, geez, throw some names at me there, Joe. Who's floating around?
Would they throw 20 million or 15 million a year at Nagelsmann?
I don't think Nagelsmann would take it, to be honest with you. I think that he... the thing about managers, they'll always speak. The first thing Nagelsmann is going to do is phone Conte. The first thing Conte would phone Mourinho, because they just want to say, hey, what's going on? What are the ins and outs of this club? And they obviously tell them, look, there's an issue. There's a disconnect between management level and ownership level. We ask for certain things. We don't get them. Sometimes we do. Sometimes we don't. And winning isn't the main priority of that football club. Getting the brand new shiny stadium out is the priority. Getting the brand new training ground out was a priority. And unfortunately, that's where your money's tied up now for the next number of years.
Okay. I think a lot of us anticipated the Newcastle situation would become a farce for a few years. They'd have all the growing pains that go with big takeover, money being thrown around, harsh lessons being learned, and somehow they seem to have circumvented all of those usual issues. And here they are in third place at the moment. Man United do have a game in hand, level on points with Newcastle, but Newcastle currently in third. And Kenny referred in the commentary clip there to their athleticism, which he called ferocious. Like, they do really come at you in waves. Eddie Howe has done a bloody good job. I refuse to hear he hasn't.
He has done a good job. There's no doubt about that, because he would have been under pressure immediately. When the owners of that football club bought it, there was an immediate pressure to win games of football. And I remember remarking one night in one of the games I did, I said he's probably the most under pressure manager. His first 5 or 6 games, if it doesn't go well, I think they would have moved on from him very, very quickly, because they have the type of finances now to do that. But why would they? He's doing a superb job. And I think the key reason for that is they stayed away from the superstar. Think Manchester City, when they were first bought out by big money, they signed Robinho. A circus rolled into town, and the easiest thing for Newcastle to do would have been that. But they had the core nucleus of a half-decent squad, and they've just added nicely to it. Isak, what a great little signing that is, as well as already having Wilson. 2 superb number 9s. And if there was ever a city that can create a wave of optimism, fans that will buy in to what's going on, it's in Newcastle fans. I know that nearly everybody has been to St James's Park and witnessed a game, or at the very least been to Newcastle for a stag do at some point, and they know what the type of energetic fans and people that Newcastle are. And that club has been starved of success for such a long time, and you could not underestimate the wave of optimism, that the belief in that city at the moment. I don't think there's any other city like it in the UK. If we're going to football matches, they are the most passionate, loudest, difficult fans. They travel and they love their team. Yes, they can moan with the best of them, but why would they know when you look at where they are in the league? It's incredible.
And would you subscribe to the notion, I don't know how true it is or not, that Eddie Howe almost took into account a kind of feverish atmosphere in that stadium and said the type of football we should play should mirror that. They should feed into one another, or no, that's not how a manager would even think about things.
I don't think that either like Eddie Howe did it first or the fans did it first. I just think it happened organically. I think the fans just bought into it, and the players just all of a sudden were like, oh my God, we're signing players, and it was just something really organic, and that's why it's so good. Yeah. You can try and force that and try and, put on promotions for fans and kind of force situations like that. But I just think that it was a perfect marriage at the right time, and they already had the nucleus of a good squad. They really did.
I almost mean the style of play. Like, it's high pressing, it's high energy, it's hard running. It's not slow, pedantic, patient football.
But you couldn't. I think the players will feed off the crowd, and the crowd will feed off the players. That relationship that you're talking about, I understood what you were saying. Yeah. I think it just happened organically. I think the players were just like, oh my God, showing up to the stadium and queuing, I'd say, in your car to get into St. James's Park as a player, or by bus, or you could imagine that it was the type of situation where the players had to be there really, really early before kickoff because there was a festival atmosphere outside the ground. You could imagine that the players can't get away from the stadium after the game because it's so hectic. You could imagine the nights out in Newcastle on Saturday night after a game. I think that was just something that happened organically. The manager would have been aware of it, absolutely, but the fans as well would have been like just absolutely driving that. And I think it just happened organically, as I said.
It's a few times now you referenced either stag do's or nights out in Newcastle, so you got some stories you want to tell us?
No, absolutely not. But I know that every listener has at least been to one stag do in Newcastle, and they can tell you what a vociferous, lively, Joe, is that the saying we should use? A lively bunch of people from Newcastle are. And you can imagine them with a bit of success in a stadium that's already made for it, a city that's already primed for what happened to happen. It was beautiful.
I would imagine there are people listening shuddering right now. You're bringing back dark memories for them. We're going to take a short break. I do want to talk to you about the rest of the weekend. So we have a Manchester City, Manchester United FA Cup final. United will get their chance to hold the treble, which increasingly feels almost more likely than not, I think, in many people's eyes. As for the penalty shootout, there were 12 really good penalties, and then Solly Marsh stepped up with number 13, Damien, and blazed it over, and the tears came, and that awful thing when you're walking back, and usually as a footballer you make a mistake in a game, you have some opportunity to put it right, but it's like the realisation, it's over, it's done, oh my God. And then before I felt too sorry for him, a load of people on Twitter put up from December their exit in the League Cup at the hands of Charlton. Solly Marsh hits exactly the same penalty, blazes it over the bar in exactly the same way, and I thought, well, once being a bit unfortunate, Solly, twice is a touch careless, so I don't know.
I think you're being a little unfair there. I don't think there's a single player in that Brighton changing room will hold him accountable.
Would you, if a player blazed one over the exact same way in December and then blazed one over the exact same way in April, would you not have said, no, Solly, mate, just think about going low there, no?
No, you couldn't.
You're a liar.
No, I wouldn't.
You'd have him against the wall. I know you.
I wouldn't. No chance. Taking a penalty is hard. Like I've been involved in some games, and I'm thinking it's getting round to me. 8 or 9, and I was like, I just don't want to take a penalty. It's just not for me. I would congratulate him and say fair play to you for having the courage to step up again. It happens. I mean, there's nobody would have him against the wall, or there's nobody would in any way hold him responsible. In fact, quite the opposite. Everybody would just be saying unlucky. You move on, it happens, they had enough chances. That Matoma chance at the end, where he absolutely milled David De Gea afterwards, was just a slight heavy touch, that beautiful one-touch football, and he just dragged it too far and De Gea got it. I mean, just a defter touch there, and they win it. So there was plenty of opportunities for Brighton to win that game in normal time. And penalties are penalties. It is what it is. Yeah. You just move on, and I'm pretty sure that in 2 years' time, if there is another penalty shootout, Solly Marsh will step up and blaze it over the bar again,
Joe. Would you class Brighton as a better coach team than Manchester United?
They're certainly easier on the eye. Absolutely. They have a great structure there. They've kind of gone down the road of Southampton were 4 or 5 years ago, where they're just signed players to slot into the system, and they'll always be thinking, if he goes or he goes, who do we have come in? They're usually under the radar, not costing very much, and they slide in. And the same with managers. I don't think Brighton will be panicked at all if De Zerbi moves on at the end of the season. They'll be drawing up a short list of managers who have the playing style that De Zerbi has, and they won't miss a beat. The problem with that is still finding the players that I'm talking about there, those players, because a couple of missteps and all of a sudden, results drop and the energy kind of saps out of the team. But I'm pretty sure they have a good scouting system, and they should just enjoy it now while they're moving forward.
For Manchester United, it's a chance to stop City winning the treble. That's a major carrot, and win another trophy. They're just a curious team at the moment. They have absolutely improved under Ten Hag. There's no doubt they've improved, and yet they throw in performances like Anfield a number of weeks ago, and then Seville on Thursday. That was abject.
Yeah. I think they're a fragile team. They're a team as well that have suffered from their recruitment over a number of years.